ask you real quick.
What's up, people of the courtroom? What's up, man? Hey,
we're on.
We are just kicking off right here. It's the sports court on a Tuesday, man. And I know all y'all are excited to see us, just as excited as we are to be in here. We're going to talk about the NBA playoffs, which have been really good so far. There's a lot of good matchups top to bottom. You're not always going to get these 1-8, 2-7 matchups that are going to have this type of, cloud around them, but you've got that going on right now. And Astros fans who are joining us, I'm sorry you guys had to deal with being swept by the Rangers, but we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the competitiveness in that division and why. Don't be surprised that the Rangers did that. We saw the Rangers do some things in that series that makes it look like they're going to be a pesky foe for the Astros going forward. And also, we're going to talk a little bit of NFL. Aaron Rodgers has made some comments that it looks like the QB landscape, it's still going to shift. It's still going to slide one way or the other. Deshaun Watson's still going to move, and it looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to as well. But we start out with number 1 seed in the West, Utah. They fall to Memphis. John Morant is at it again. Greg, tell me about this series.
Hey, you know what, Eddie? First of all, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to my guy, Eddie Cox. Happy birthday, man. How do you feel right now?
Man, I feel old. No, I'm kidding, dude.
34 years old, bro.
I'm kidding, man. I feel great.
There
Look,
you go.
When you get in your
Just
30s,
a number, man.
Look, when you get in your 30s, you start to kind of dread the day. It's the day that you have to, admit to yourself the fact that you are 1 year older. I think a lot of us, we enjoy being 33 the whole time we're 33. We don't turn 34 until that day. Don't call me 30.
But you know what?
But look at the mistake I made.
That's why I was about to go with that. Go ahead and finish what you're saying.
Dude, I've been thinking that I was 34 all year long, that a couple of days before my birthday, I swear to you guys, I could not remember how old I was going to turn.
You know what?
I didn't know I knew I wasn't going to be 33, but I was like, am I going to be 34 or 35? Because I've been telling myself, and everybody knew that I meet, that I'm already 34, because I just, I surrendered to the fact that the birthday's on its way.
But you know what? That's where I was going with that. And trust me, my friend, I remember 34 like it was yesterday.
I had to Google
and
it.
I'll be 51 July 1st. But I remember 34 like it was yesterday. But you know what I started doing about 15 years ago? I would say about 15 years ago. Maybe about 6 months before my birthday, not a few weeks, about 6 months before my birthday, I already start looking at myself as that age I'm about to be. I mean, and it's never a big deal. It's whatever, it's just, but so when that day rolls around, it's just another day. It's just another day, and it's all about how you feel. And you know what, man? But happy birthday to you, and let's rock and roll. But about the series?
Definitely tell me about the series, and whatever question you had right before the show. If y'all caught the beginning of the show, you caught Greg trying to get in some last minute intel.
It was yeah. Hey,
and I'm trying to tell him, dude, we are live right now. We're
going live. I did not know we were live right then, but a lot of times,
for a second.
A lot of times we do some last minute prep, just getting on the same page about things. We both, do other things during the week, and we talk throughout the week periodically, maybe text here and there, do some kind of prep. I mean, a lot of times we don't do in-depth prep to where it takes away from the pureness of the show to where everything is just too...
Hey, we fly by the seat of our pants, baby.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times we just wing it. We go for what we know, and I think sometimes that makes the show... that adds to the pureness of it.
Hey,
but at the same time, we want to be prepared and all this and that. So I was just...
It gives you a fan's perspective, dude. Because, fans, we're there with our teams when they win and lose on Sundays or on game days. But during the week, we're still grinding. We're still working. We still got to take care of our team at home. But we've all got an opinion on what's going on, and we're just a couple of guys that love sports so much that we've got.
And you know what's funny?
You got some heavy quotes and some heavy hands.
Absolutely.
When it comes to talking about this stuff, and so I'm glad you guys are with us, and I'm glad you guys are here to take part.
Hey, likewise, I totally concur with that. Likewise, thanks for joining us on Facebook, on YouTube. We appreciate that. The YouTube followers are slowly but surely rising, Eddie. Hey, we have to get to 50 before we can get to 500 and vice versa. So let's just keep doing what we do. It was funny, man. It's funny. A guy asked me the other day, he said, man, when y'all gonna get to one of these major networks and blah, 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 blah. I say, look, bro, I'm gonna tell you like this. I'm going to tell you like this. I said, and you know what's funny? Let me go back real quick. You know what's funny, Eddie? I'll never forget before I started the show, and I said to myself, I had to go back and look at my phone. I said, damn, how long have I been doing this show? I said, damn, it hadn't even been 5 years yet. It's 5 years come December 5th will be 5 years. And I'll never forget, man, harkening back real quick before we get to some NBA basketball. Of course, we're going to talk some NFL, like Eddie talked about, some MLB. Phil Mickelson won the Masters, 50 years old, the oldest to ever do it. Like Ice Cube said a long time ago, do something that ain't nobody ever done before. But Phil Mickelson, and on and on and on. We're going to talk some Saquon Barkley, his comeback, Joe Burrow. I mean, on and on and on. So we're going to talk a lot of NBA, a lot of NFL, and some MLB. But the guy asked me, he said, I said, hey, man, it's all in God's timing. But I had to go back and look. I say, have I been doing this show for 14 years? Or it'll be 5 years in December. I say whenever God says it's time, but we're gonna keep plugging away. Now we're on YouTube and we're gonna keep plugging away at that. Actually, that's where it's at right now, to tell you the truth. But harkening back real quick, Eddie, I'll never forget, man, your boy, name drop alert, your boy Kirk Herbstreit, college teammate of mine, good friend of mine. Back before I started doing the show, before I started broadcasting high school football, right around there in 2016, I'll never forget, Eddie. I'll never forget. I called Herb. I was like, man, give me an ESPN or blah, blah, blah. Now, I hadn't even started the show yet. I hadn't started the show. I hadn't even done any high school broadcasting. But Herb knew I was good for it, though. So he called some guy at the Big Ten Network, big-time executive. He called the guy at the Big Ten Network. So I called the guy. The first thing the guy asked me was, what are you doing locally? He said, what are you doing locally? And at the time, I hadn't been doing anything locally. Right. But, of course, I've been following sports since I was a baby, but, ever since I was born, so to speak. But I was like, So he was like, let me tell you this. And I appreciate her for doing this at the time because that's what actually got me going and doing the things that I'm doing. He was like, do your thing locally first. And it usually takes about 5 to 7 years. Sometimes less, sometimes more. He's like, if you some NFL player that just retired, you can probably get it immediately. He was like, about 5 to 7 years, build your brand, do your thing locally and go from there. Within the next 2 weeks, I'll start the podcast, blah, blah, blah. So it'll be 5 years come December the 5th. So we're just staying the course, doing what we do, and let the chips fall where they may. But regardless, we're going to talk sports anyway. So why not do it on the platform? And we're going to continue to do this for many, many, many years to come, regardless of where it is. So if you want to tune in, tune in. If you want to be on the journey, on the ride, do that. If not, good riddance. And because we're going to talk sports regardless. But I'll say this, though. Man. As far as Ja Morant, Eddie Cox, the birthday boy right here. Last week I said that Ja Morant, he needs to work on that jump shot. He needs to work on that three-point shot. And Steph, that game before the playoffs, when they were going for, when they were jockeying for position and all this and that, I said, Ja Morant has to work on that three-point shot because Steph Curry showed him why he's one of the greatest of all time. Now, what it showed me about Ja Morant when they came back, I didn't know that they were going to play again that soon. I thought maybe it would be the next year. Now, granted, you see how high I've been on Memphis all year and how high I've been on Ja Morant all year. I've brought Memphis up a lot of times on this show, but I thought that game, Steph just showed him what was up. And, of course, I made the comment, too. Of course, it's only one game. You don't want to get caught up on the fact that it's one game. But what Ja Morant showed me when they came back and played again that ultimately knocked Golden State out, that really solidified how great I think this young man is going to be. And it solidified his competitive nature because he left that game when they lost to Golden State, previously to the game that they just won the other day to knock Golden State out. When they lost to Golden State, Eddie, Ja Morant made it a point to give Steph Curry his props, saying that he's the MVP. But the whole time he did that, he was seething. He was like, I can't wait to get back on the court again. And I can't wait to prove that I can knock down this three-point shot. And not that he couldn't, but it's still a shot that he has to be more consistent with. But he's a dog, and he's one of the future faces. He's one of the present faces of the NBA. But what he did in that game, when I found out they were playing Golden State again, me and a couple of my boys were texting. I said, hey, I don't know if it's going to be the same outcome because Memphis is gritty, they're grimy, they're well coached, and I think Ja is going to come in with guns blazing, ready to redeem himself for what happened a couple of days ago. And that's exactly what happened, man. So kudos to the Memphis Grizzlies. They're playing at a very high level right now. Again, they have Jaren Jackson back, but Ja Morant is the real deal. But you have to give credit to what the coaching staff is doing for them. And the Memphis Grizzlies are a team to be reckoned with. That's why it was so surprising before we talk about that series. That's why it was so surprising before that game against Utah when I was actually watching my guys on TNT. Love those guys. Barkley, Shaq, Kenny Smith. Love those guys, man. I mean, superb show. I mean, the awards speak for themselves. I mean, tremendous show. Probably the best show on television, to tell you the truth. But I was surprised on how all of them pretty much said that the Grizzlies didn't have a shot in their first game. Like Utah is going to win the game. And I was saying to myself, is Donovan Mitchell playing tonight? I mean, because I'm not so sure about that. Now, Utah may come back and win tonight. Utah may ultimately win the series. But Memphis is a team to be reckoned with. And they're young, they're hungry, and I like the way Ja redeemed himself. That team is grimy, they're gritty, well coached, and they proved it in the game one against Utah.
No, without a doubt. They took advantage of an opportunity that was sort of gifted to them by not having Donovan Mitchell be on the court. A lot of people, including Donovan Mitchell himself and everybody in his camp, thought that he was going to play in that game, and he was ready to come back and be the leader that he tried to be from the sidelines, but ultimately wasn't able to lead enough from there, and they fall short in this game. And I'm not going to take anything away from Memphis. Everything you just said, I agree with. Mm-hmm. But Utah's number one in the West for a reason. And not before I get away from Memphis and talk more about Utah, Dillon Brooks.
Oh man,
this is the kind of cat you hope you come across with a 45th pick, in the NBA draft when you're drafted in the second round. This is why they have that round. Some people say the NBA draft should be just a first round, ordeal. Pick them and you're done. But no, you get good players like this, guys who rise to the occasion. And I think Ja Morant is very thankful that he has Dillon Brooks right alongside him, because he is a big reason why they've been able to upset these teams in these first couple games going into the NBA playoffs. And okay, I'll go back to Utah as well too. Utah, I think they look like a rudderless ship without Donovan Mitchell out on the court.
True that.
That's one thing. I like Michael Conley. I think there's a lot of things he can do, but he needs that stone cold shooting guard on his hip to be as effective as he can be. And when it's all on him to distribute and get that offense going, you could sort of tell they were out of sorts. And even then, even so, they were still very competitive. They still got it together, came back late in that game, but Donovan Mitchell is ultimately going to make the difference in this series. I think he comes back, and depending on how rusty he is, I think it depends on how long this series is going to go. I think Memphis maybe has one more win in them. This one looks like it'll be done in 5 or 6. But everything, I agree with everything you said about Memphis. I think they're a magnificent young team. I think Dillon Brooks is showing you growth and grit beyond what they dreamed he would be. So keep going with that. Keep adding good pieces, like the way they added Valanciunas. That's a good piece that can help lead your team from a maturity standpoint.
Absolutely.
In the playoffs. He's been there, done that with Toronto and other organizations. So the next season, I'm curious to see. We keep saying that with Ja. Wait till next season. And this season didn't disappoint when we talked about it, 2 seasons ago when he was a rookie. Wait till his sophomore season. Now wait till that junior season and watch this team really start to take off.
Hey, you know what? I concur with that. And that was pretty much my thinking. And every time I brought him up during the basketball season, it was mainly looking forward to next season and beyond. Of course, they played without Jaren Jackson for a long time. But I will say this, and we're talking about a team that's up 1-0 right now. The way they finished the season was they showed that not only are they a team to be reckoned with in the future, They're a team. They're a team to be reckoned with right now. And when you continue to be very gritty and very in sync on the defensive side of the ball and very competitive on the defensive side of the ball, and I always talk about, defense, defense, defense. Who can bring the defensive energy? Because you never know. You never know if your shots are going to fall or not. But one thing that you can control is how you bring it on the defensive end. And that's one thing we've noticed about Memphis, that they can bring it on the defensive end. And I'll tell you what, I think another thing that actually motivated Memphis this year to really get ahead of the curve and to really, really show people that, hey, they're a team to be reckoned with more sooner than later is the fact that, do you remember when Andre Iguodala spurned them and said that he didn't want to go to Memphis, and he said he did not want to go to Memphis, and ultimately ended up in Miami, and he did not want to go to Memphis? I think quietly that really, 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 really got those guys really in tune and in sync, and really got them even more motivated. And I think now that goes unnoticed, and people don't talk about that. But I think the diss by Andre Iguodala really made that team come together even more, and they were able to even gel more, even more quickly than people would suspect. But I just think Ja Morant, as great as he is, to go along with those guys love playing with him. But the grit that those guys bring, I mean, they are one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now, and it wouldn't surprise me. I'm picking Utah right now to win the series. I'm going to go ahead and say that. And that's contingent on the fact that if our boy Donovan Mitchell comes back. But Memphis is not going to be an easy out. Okay, if it goes 5 or 6 games, that's 4-1, 4-2. Yeah. We'll see. But Donovan Mitchell better come back clicking on all cylinders, because Memphis is not going anywhere. Obviously, tonight or the next time they play is a must-win game. I wouldn't say must-win. But you don't want to go down 0-2 going back to Memphis.
Right. I mean, that would put your back against the wall.
That's really high on their team right now. Ja is playing at a high level. He's only going to get better. Jaren Jackson is only going to get better. Dylan Brooks is only going to get better. And they feel like they belong right now. And I just love what I'm seeing from this Memphis team. And they put Steph and Golden State out real quick, Eddie. Golden State. I mean, now, are they in the lottery now?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it may have worked out better for Golden State. I mean, at the end of the day, now Golden State has Clay coming back. They have James Wiseman coming back. And all those, Kelly Oubre, if he can live up to his potential, to go along with Bazemore and Jordan Poole and all those guys that were playing at a high level. And you have, I mean, Quadras is kept. Golden State, if Clay and Wiseman come back healthy, and I know people can say, well, Wiseman, he's a 7-footer, and you see how they played without him, where, they were playing small ball and they were doing this and doing. No. James Wiseman is the second pick in the draft, a guy who can stretch the floor, a guy who can do a myriad of things, who was coming into his own. Trust me, by mid-season next season, James Wiseman will be one of those guys. When you look at the stat sheet every night, or more times than not, you're going to see 25 and 12 and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the guy's going to be a superstar.
Look,
so let's not get it twisted.
When you're talking about the Warriors, with Steph and all his greatness, ultimately it's going to come down to whether or not they can stay healthy and they can keep everybody happy.
Bingo.
Draymond Green still has a lot of tread left on that tire. That guy's still going to play some good basketball
and they bring it on the defense side of the
ball. Like you mentioned about Clay, we all know that team, if healthy, anything they can add to the mix, whether it be a lottery pick or any pick in the first or second round, they're going to find a way to use this person and get them involved, as Steph Curry is going to lead the charge on that, along with Steve Kerr. But as it relates to Memphis and Memphis' ability to beat them and to win game one, you look at what Golden State was going through as far as injuries and not having a full squad. That's where Memphis is going to be tested in the future. Ultimately, are they going to build that team with enough depth to where they can still win on nights whenever Ja Morant isn't having his best stuff? And that's where
Jaren Jackson comes in.
When you're looking at the growth of Dylan Brooks and where scoring and points can come from, that's promising. But ultimately, they have to have the depth to be able to sustain a major injury or to be able to win whenever their top scorers don't have their best stuff. And when they start to do that, that's whenever I think Memphis will make the jump from being a fringe playoff team to being a real contender in the West.
Hey, you know what? I agree with that. And you know what? Utah is the favorite. They were the number 1 team in the Western Conference. So it's no surprise that Utah is the favorite if Donovan Mitchell is healthy and playing at a high level. Now, obviously, they're going to have to. John's going to come in with those runners and things like that, and they're going to have to protect the rim. We know they can protect the rim, and so Utah is going to get it together if they have their star back in Donovan Mitchell, who actually said that he was ready to play last game and was supposedly mad because they didn't allow him to play. But Memphis seized the opportunity. I mean, and that's the sign of a good team right there, and ultimately what will eventually become a great team when you seize the opportunity. You see they have their main guy not playing. You seize that opportunity, and you go in there and you steal game 1. You put all the pressure on Utah. You see what Utah did last year when they lost out in the playoffs, and the Utah Jazz are the number 1 seed right now in the Western Conference. So are they feeling the pressure right now to come back and feel that they have to get game 2? Because now all the pressure's on them, because the Memphis Grizzlies, they're playing with house money. They're not even supposed to be here right now. They're not even supposed to be as far along as they are. And for them to steal game 1, now they're going to come in more relaxed. They're going to come in, and they're just going to play their style. They're going to play their game. And what they're going to do, they're going to continue to turn it up on the defensive end and make Utah make plays and make shots. And let's see what kind of an impact Donovan Mitchell is going to have and if he's going to wield his team to victory. But the Utah Jazz,
I think when you see, you're going to see a different Utah team.
You
when
will,
he's out on the floor
because their backs are against the wall.
Look,
and Quinn Snyder's a great coach.
From the first seed in the West to the second seed in the West, because this is the matchup that I think everybody's really looking closely at, because it's Chris Paul, the Suns, the immediate turnaround he was able to give that team, and then it's the Lakers in the play-in tournament, coming in a little shaky, a little injured. They're not able to win game 1. Greg, tell me what you saw.
You know what? Hold on, man. I got sidetracked right there because I was listening to that music coming in there, and I was like, hey, who you talking about right there?
Suns, Lakers.
Lakers
dropped game 1.
You know what? I was hoping we talked about them like later, but we'll talk about that right now. That's cool too. The Suns and the Lakers. You know what? What I saw in game 1 was a Phoenix Suns team that actually, were they the number 1 seed or was Utah the number 1 seed?
They were number 2. Utah was number 1.
Okay, Phoenix was number 2 seed.
Yeah.
And you've been very high on Phoenix all season, and so have I. But I think Phoenix came in and they were at home. Obviously, they're a very good team, well coached by Monty Williams. I mean, and you have Chris Paul playing point guard. But what have I said since I started the show, like I said earlier, 2016, December 5th. And that was when DeAndre Ayton was just coming into the league. And I was very high on him. I used to always bring up DeAndre Ayton and how I thought that Phoenix got them a franchise-type center and how he had a chance to be one of the best centers in the game. And now, granted, he's had some injuries, and I thought he had a good year when he played. But he's had some injuries, and he probably didn't hit the ground running like a lot of number 1s do, where he's just dominating night in and night out like a Shaquille O'Neal did when he first hit the scene with Orlando. But I've always seen the potential when he's healthy, when that knee is not bothering him. And I've always said the entire season, now their success, yes, Chris Paul, all those guys, of course, Devin Booker, but DeAndre Ayton has had a very good year. I thought the presence of DeAndre Ayton was crucial in game 1, and I'll talk about the Lakers in a second. I thought the presence of DeAndre Ayton was crucial in game 1. For one, they came in feeling like, okay, they were not picked to beat the Lakers anyway, so they're playing with house money. Of course, you have Chris Paul at the helm, a guy who's been there, done that, a guy that's at first ballot. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and you know the competitive nature that Chris Paul has. You know he's going to get all these players around him to play at a high level and to believe that they can get the job done. And that's exactly what happened in game one. You have a guy like Devin Booker who can cook. I'm talking about can straight up heat it up at any given time. And you have a team that came in excited to be in the playoffs, no matter the lack of experience. Now, that's one of the things that I've said throughout the season. I still think the Lakers win the series. That remains to be seen, but we'll see. But I still pick the Lakers now. But you have a guy, you have a team that I thought maybe the inexperience would hinder them in the playoffs. That didn't mean that they couldn't win a game or they couldn't win a series. I didn't know they were going to match up against the Lakers. Until all the injuries happened, nobody thought that they would match up against the Lakers. So it's not like I thought that they would bow out in the first round. But in game one, they had the energy from that crowd behind them. They had Chris Paul at the point guard, even though he went out for a second and came back. But I'm sure he was in their ear before the game telling them that, hey, they put their clothes on the same way we put our clothes on, and they're human just like us. So let's go out and do what we do. Then you have a guy like Devin Booker who can light it up. And he hadn't even been in the playoffs yet, so he was excited. And the shots were dropping. But DeAndre Ayton played big in that game. Anthony Davis was a no-show.
Hey.
Was a no-show.
There's no doubt about that.
I think he has a big game tonight.
I agree with you about Ayton, and that guy really showed his ability to soften the center of that Lakers defense, and he did a fantastic job. I can't get behind the crowd noise thing, though, because they've got tarps all over the seats. There's no fans in that building. The pumped-in crowd noise noise. It's good stuff when you're listening to it on TV. It sounds like, it sounds like when they hit a three, it sounds like everybody's going nuts. So, I don't know. Maybe the players can't tell the difference. How many
did they have, though? Because they're allowing more and more fans in these stadiums now.
I can't tell you how many. All I know is there was a Suns tarp everywhere I could see on the telecast.
But these guys are getting loud in there, man. Even the few fans that they have in there are getting very loud.
But Anthony Davis playing the most minutes of anybody on the team and having the least production, that's what really hurt the Lakers there. Because clearly we know that they have good depth. They've got a good bench, and that – on paper, they should match up against the Suns. But coming into the playoffs, the Lakers were struggling. They were beat up, leaking oil, as we like to say, and blowing parts, trying to get to the finish line of the season, while Phoenix is still operating like a well-oiled machine.
Absolutely.
It may be, like we talked about, the Lakers just don't have maybe the vigor to keep up with this young Suns team. The way Booker is able to zig and zag through the lane. If the Lakers aren't, what's the word I'm looking for?
More engaged and more energized.
Maybe engaged, yeah, but it has a lot to do with LeBron, because I feel like LeBron looks very lackadaisical. When he's making an effort to really go out and put the most points up that he can, I think that invigorates his team. It causes defenses to really turn up the heat on him, maybe even double team, collapse the lane on him, opens up things for all their shooters.
Absolutely.
But when he lays back and just distributes the basketball and maybe tries to lean on AD to do all the scoring, or I know it was Schroeder that was taking a lot of the shots the other night, the Lakers just don't seem to have the same energy.
Agree.
And
Eddie,
that's what hurts them.
Eddie, I
especially
totally
against
agree.
a team like the Suns.
Hey, man, I totally agree. And that's actually what I was going to say when I talked about the Lakers, but you stole my thunder. And, hey, you know what? This is the Sports Court with Gregory Bate and Eddie Cox. And if I don't say it, you say it. It's all good. So I'm glad you said that, because that's where I was going to go. It's one thing. Now, what I noticed about the Lakers was they looked lackadaisical. They looked like a team that wasn't playing with any desperation the same way the Suns were. They looked like a team who was happy just to get into the playoffs, like they were happy that they won that game against Golden State, and now they have a series. And even though the last couple of seasons, I think, they've lost game one in the series, they feel they can come back. But what it looks like to me, and that's the same thing I noticed about LeBron, even in the game against Golden State. Now, you're talking about a guy that had a triple-double. They hit that big shot, a great game against Golden State, as a matter of fact. They hit that big shot to propel the Lakers into the playoffs. But it sounds crazy to say, it may sound crazy to say that this guy, LeBron James, still didn't look like LeBron James, and he had a triple-double. But he hasn't. He hasn't since he's come back from the ankle injury. And in that game one against the Phoenix Suns, that's the main thing I noticed. He looks like he's laboring with that ankle right now, and he doesn't have the same energy, and he doesn't have the same legs, and he doesn't have the same vigor. And I totally agree with you, man. Great point by you in the fact that his team feeds off of his energy. When he's really attacking, he settled for a lot of jump shots. He wasn't attacking. I think that would change tonight. But it made me wonder, is LeBron ankle bothering him that much? Because he just hasn't looked like the same LeBron James. He's been very subdued.
Greg, it has to be.
It has to be.
Because
that's my
I
point.
don't see Phoenix and Chris Paul being a team that LeBron James wants to play cat and mouse with.
Right.
You know, like I think
you don't want to go down 0-2 for sure.
Whenever they played the Rockets and the Rockets come out and go out and steal game one, and you felt like LeBron laid back and was real lackadaisical, and then the next thing you know, he comes out and goes off for like 40 points. He was being the authoritator. He was going to the basket. He was done distributing the basketball. He was looking to score the ball first, distribute the ball second, and it changed the whole narrative of the Lakers postseason, I believe. I mean, they really rode that wave. All of a sudden, Caldwell Pope, who's this guy?
Right.
Now he's playing tons of minutes for them.
Yeah.
It all revolves around LeBron, like you said.
I totally agree, man. It all revolves. Hey, and I think tonight he comes out with a vengeance, and I don't think he wants to go down 0-2 to a Phoenix team led by his friend Chris Paul.
Like
he
you said,
knows
if it's that ankle, can he?
Well, see, that's the thing right there. LeBron, he can't be healthy right now, and of course he's probably not going to be 100%. But I've been watching him the last couple of games, how he's just laying back in the cut, and I've been waiting for him to just take over, take the ball to the basket, get to the foul line, show that energy, really hype up his team, pump up his team, and he hasn't done it. And I watch him sometime when he walks to the sideline during the commercial break, and he looks like he has a limp, which is understandable, but I don't think LeBron is all the way healthy. Now, we'll know more tonight about how healthy he is, but one thing, and I'll go back to it, one thing the Lakers have to do, and of course this goes without saying, but of course they have to make shots. And if LeBron is not giving them that energy, if that energy is not permeating throughout the team because of the exploits and the energy level of LeBron James, and he can't depend on Anthony Davis, because what Anthony Davis has to realize, and he's been doing this for a while now. He'll have a bad game in the playoffs. Then tonight he may come back and have 35 and 15. But what he has to realize as a superstar, as one of the two superstars on the team, on the playoff team, a championship team. Now, we are talking about a team that won the championship last year. But the two superstars have to bring it every game. You look at Kobe and Shaq. You look at all these guys. I mean, they brought it every game in the playoffs. So Anthony Davis, he doesn't have the luxury of getting this team in an 0-1 hole or 0-2 hole, because these teams are gunning for the Lakers right now. So he has to do his part every game. Now, of course, you're going to miss some shots every now and then. But you have to hit the boards. You have to play defense. And that's one thing the Lakers have to do. They have to bring their defensive intensity and let their offense feed off of that. So I think that's what will happen tonight. And I think the Lakers get it done. Now, I don't know if I'll be woke to watch that game.
And a lot of people are disappointed that the playoffs are going to be held, so late. But that's just the way it rolls in the NBA, especially when they want to get all these on TV, on TNT, and all that. That's the slate it's been for as long as I can remember.
Yeah,
you're going to have that late game.
Yeah,
it's just the way it is.
I think I'll stay up and watch.
So I think we could both agree that it may not be a must-win for the Lakers, but they certainly need to find a way to get that thing rolling. Otherwise, if they do fall behind 2-0 to the Suns, they're definitely going to have their backs in the wall, feeling like they need to win both games at home.
Agreed. Yeah.
Otherwise, that could be it for the defending champion.
Agreed.
Now let's move on. How about we do a little bit of the Eastern Conference, the 76ers and the Wizards. The Wizards put up a good battle, 76ers just being a little bit too much to handle. Did you get to watch that game, Greg?
I actually didn't get to watch that game. I saw the highlights. I'm just being honest.
Hey, that's all right. But how you think the 76ers fared in that game? And tell me if they look like a team that should be the number one seed and has a shot to win it all.
Well, you know what? From what I was able to gather
I'll tell you right now, I didn't see it.
I didn't either.
No, that's what I mean. I didn't see that championship team.
Okay.
It didn't look like it to me.
Well, see, that's why I haven't picked Philadelphia all season.
It looks like if they were the actual Washington Wizards and not the Washington Westbrooks, they might actually have won that game and have a chance of eliminating a number one seed. I just didn't see the championship quality basketball from the 76ers.
Well, that's why you have not seen me pick the Philadelphia 76ers to win it all season. As great of a job as Doc Rivers has done, Joel Embiid, who's in the MVP running, even though Jokic is going to get it, the Joker, but he damn sure wasn't joking last night. We'll talk about that in a second. But Philadelphia, I mean, Ben Simmons, you never know what you're going to get out of Ben Simmons. Now, you're going to get a good all-around game. He's going to play some defense and things of that sort. Embiid is going to do his thing, but I don't know if Philadelphia has the necessary depth. I don't think now Tobias Harris is good, but I don't know if they have the necessary depth to really
if they
make
didn't have
some
Tobias
noise.
Harris, they wouldn't have won that game. I'll
There
tell
it
you that
is.
right now.
There it is. Now, other than Embiid, Tobias Harris, and is Embiid going to get in the way of Ben Simmons doing his thing? Ben Simmons, who still will not shoot jumpers and three-pointers for some reason. I mean, if he's a guy that had worked on that three-pointer and was willing just to even take the three-pointer throughout the season and maybe even get better at it just from repetition alone, maybe that would bode well for the 76ers in the sense that will open the floor up and that will open up things for Joel Embiid. But for some reason, he feels it's okay to not develop a three-point shot in today's game, not realizing that it's going to work well for not only himself, but his team's chances moving forward. So can Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons coexist? Do they have enough depth? Do they have anybody else that can handle the point guard position, that can handle the ball, that can make plays and initiate the offense and really get the job done? I just don't know if Philadelphia has the necessary depth.
I agree. And if they were playing anybody but Washington, if they were playing a little bit tougher team.
You say the Washington Westbrooks.
The Washington Westbrooks, double dubs. I think they would be in danger of an early exit from the NBA playoffs. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them. We can move on to talk about the 2 seed. The Brooklyn Nets. Okay. The Celtics, right? Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, they're playing the Celtics tonight, as a matter of fact.
That was a
Y'all
game.
Y'all had that game on in the background with the volume turned down.
That was
the sports court.
That was a game 1, where the Celtics looked like they may have had something. It was like watching. Ohio State play Indiana, where Indiana will come out and they'll go take that 21-point lead, but then the next thing you know, they get serious and
58-21.
Yeah, it looked like Brooklyn really didn't turn it on until late. I think it was in the third quarter, and they never looked back. And you could tell as things started to slip away, Boston they could see what was happening. They saw the writing on the wall and weren't able to hold on. Mm-hmm. But early on, it looked like Boston, had a good recipe for slowing down the Nets. I don't think there's any chance they win this series, Greg, but did you see a championship basketball team in the Brooklyn Nets?
I'm not going to say. Now, I've heard some people talk about how they look so good and blah, 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 blah.
You know who looked good? Kyrie Irving. I hate saying that.
Kyrie Irving,
but man, he looked good.
But one thing, now, they were surprisingly more in sync than I thought they would be, and it really happened more like the second quarter. First quarter, they were still trying to fill everything out, and Boston was kind of playing above. Of course, Boston is without Jaylen Brown. So
right.
Boston
I don't think they feel pressed at all against Boston, so it was one of those things where they kind of coast in the first half, and then if they need to, James will start taking more step back. Yeah. Kyrie will start going to the basket a little bit more, and if all else fails, you give it to KD, and nobody can stop him. It's like they don't even have to use him that much, and that's what's so great about it.
He can take over whenever he wants.
Yeah.
And as far as Boston is concerned, they have to wait till next year. Jaylen Brown is not there, and they just stopped making shots. But who have I been raving about on this show who should be in the starting lineup? I like what Tristan Thompson gives them. Robert Williams. I mean, you see what he was able to do when he got in the game, and I think now, of course, he was injured during the latter part of the season. Yeah. But you see he's healthy right now. You insert him into the starting lineup, and you actually have him get that energy going throughout the team early and often. Give him the bulk of the minutes. Tristan Thompson is playing I like what Tristan Thompson is doing. He's still Tristan Thompson, but he's a backup center to Robert Williams. Robert Williams can be a superb center who can still get better in scoring the basketball, but he can rim run. He can protect the rim. What did he have, like 9 blocks? I mean, come on, man. And so you're talking about guys like Kyrie Irving, James Harden coming into the lane. As good as Tristan Thompson is, he's no Robert Williams. So you have a guy that can protect the paint, that can control and pretty much just change the whole outlook of what Brooklyn is trying to do as far as getting into the lane. So you put him in the starting lineup. If they don't incorporate him into the starting lineup in the next game, and so they can get going more earlier than later, and have him set the tone on the defensive end to really let Brooklyn know, hey, you're just not going to waltz into this lane all cute. I don't give a damn how many Hall of Famers y'all have over there. You're not coming into this lane. This is my house. This is my lane. And you come in here, it's going to get rejected, and it may get thrown into the stands. So you can be cute all you want on the outside and do what you have to do. So if Brad Stevens don't incorporate him into the starting lineup and give him the bulk of the minutes, that's a bad move by Brad Stevens. As far as the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, see, right now he's got it. Like he's splitting the minutes pretty closely. Thompson 25.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Williams 23. And I agree with you that I think whenever you look at his ability to make the highlight rebound, the highlight play, the putbacks, he's really aggressive. It makes me wonder if sometimes he don't find himself out of place on the offensive end. If maybe that's why Brad Stevens is so adept to just go with Tristan Thompson, the veteran, the guy he knows is going to be in the right spot when it comes to their offense.
I think his playoff experience is why he's doing it.
Along with the experience. But what I've seen, in the 23 minutes that he played was a guy who's going to play with his hair on fire and a guy who's going to go after the loose ball. He's going to go after the loose rebound. Maybe he's not in position to get the rebound because he tried to go for the putback dunk. But I'm all for the guy going for scoring the basketball.
And he gets the rebound.
It's worth the risk. I think you're absolutely right. He should be the starter. He should be getting the majority of the minutes, the lion's share of the minutes. And I'm curious as to why Brad Stevens is choosing to split them 50-50.
Well, me too. And I think a lot of it I think he's overthinking it. I think Brad Stevens is overthinking it. He's going with the playoff experience. I think Robert Williams, who was laboring with an injury toward the end of the season, but if you see he's healthy now, especially after you've seen what he can do in game one, you have to put him into the starting lineup. He can score some points. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of a young Akeem Olajuwon when Akeem Olajuwon was at U of H. I'm talking about a pogo stick who tried to block everything. Like I've said before on the show, I remember watching Akeem Olajuwon at U of H.
High praise.
As far as on the
Williams.
defense side of the ball.
Yeah.
But Akeem Olajuwon was a pogo stick. I mean, he tried to block everything, even in his first few years in Houston, obviously. But he would even try to block three-pointers as if that guy was in the lane in his territory trying to shoot a shot. But you have to put Robert Williams. I still don't think Boston has a shot, and of course Boston has to knock down shots. They started missing shots, and Brooklyn, once they got that cohesiveness going within those three guys, they really got it going. But one thing, some trepidation I have about Brooklyn still winning it all, because we're going to talk about Milwaukee here in a second too, about Brooklyn still winning that Eastern Conference, and I still think right now, I still say Brooklyn, if they continue to gel, and if they bring it on the defensive side of the ball. I like the way they turned it up on defense, and their defense might be better than a lot of people think when they're engaged. But one thing I notice a lot of times is sometimes the ball stops, and it's like sometimes, even though they were more in sync and the ball movement was better as the game went on than I probably thought it would be, but a lot of times I think it looked like, okay, here's Kyrie, here's your time. Okay, James Harden, here's your time. Katie, here's your time. And if they keep the ball moving and they keep running and cutting and getting to open spots to go along with Joe Harris and all those guys, and they keep bringing on the defensive side of the ball, so
we'll
I was impressed.
Ultimately,
we'll see how it continues.
We're going to see how they fare when the heat is on. We say that about a lot of teams, but they're not facing their toughest challenge right now.
Absolutely
I think it's safe to say we
especially
all agree.
Jaylen Brown.
The Nets are well on their way to the second round. Now, moving on from talking about a team who doesn't really have a chance in the Boston Celtics to a team that some are starting to say has a really good chance to come out of the East. The Milwaukee Bucks, they obliterated the Heat the other night. Man, is this a Milwaukee Bucks team that can make another run at a second chance to play for an NBA title?
You know what, man? I hadn't watched a whole lot of Milwaukee this past basketball season because I just didn't, because I was almost kind of tired of, okay, Giannis, blah, 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 But I listened to Big Perk one day, and he really woke me up to the Milwaukee Bucks. And not that of course I knew they had Drew Holiday, and I just didn't really think too much about the Bucks. I said, okay, I'll see what they do when they get to the playoffs, because we know what they're going to do to Giannis. They're going to make Giannis beat them, and Giannis is going to have to make free throws. He's going to have to make jumpers. He's going to have to perform in clutch time. I mean, Giannis, a two-time MVP. Obviously, Giannis is great. But what I'm seeing from the Milwaukee Bucks right now, I mean, Connaughton and all those guys, and Forbes. Forbes had 22 last night. Of course, Giannis is still Giannis. Had 31 last night. And
I think he was the only one who couldn't hit a three.
31, 13, and 6, yeah. And still had 31, 13,
right.
and 6. And they beat the Heat last night, 132 to 98.
Hey, Greg, really,
And
they ran him right out of the gym in the first half.
I mean,
it was
immediately
over by
immediately.
halftime.
And you know what I'm noticing about the Bucks? You know what I'm noticing about the Bucks is Drew Holiday really gives those guys another option, another ball handling threat. Obviously,
He looks like a maniac, and he plays like one,
and
too.
he
That
plays
dude's
like
a
one.
beast.
So he gives them toughness on the defense side of the ball. He's a savvy veteran, and he can make shots. He's not scared. He's not scared. He's going to go at you. So you can't put all your attention on Giannis because you have a guy in Drew Holiday that can light you up for 25 or 30 on any given night.
Right. And now
he's going to
making
command that attention.
Yeah, and you're making Chris Middleton now your third option, and that's a hell of a third option to have. These guys,
It puts everybody in their position.
and they added veterans like PJ Tucker, a guy with playoff experience, a guy with grit, a guy you could send out there just to break the forearms of whoever you think,
Right.
If you think the center is a threat, go in there and hack his ass, for the first 3 quarters, soften him up, and then we'll go at him with our studs. Then we'll send Giannis after him flying through the lane.
Absolutely.
See how willing he is to get in the way of Giannis after he's been beaten down by PJ Tucker. It just looked a little bit different. I know we do this in this business. We see one game where they're playing about as well as they could play, and you think, damn, that's a championship basketball team. That's the Milwaukee Bucks that looks like they can't be beaten. But can they sustain that type of play over a long period of time? And I think the Heat are definitely a formidable opponent. It makes me wonder what's going on with this team, as far as Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra. Is there a rift starting to form there? Is there a rift between teammates? Because they're not looking like they're playing with the same brotherly love they were playing with last year.
I totally agree with that. And real quick about Milwaukee, I like your PJ Tucker take because he brings that tenacity on the defensive side of the ball. And I think this is a different Bucks team because of Drew Holiday and because of now you got Forbes balling and Connaughton. Those guys can knock down shots. I think they came into this season, these playoffs, really wanting to get off the schneid quickly and really get ahead of the game and really get out to a quick 1-0 lead so they can relax and they don't feel all the pressure. But I think the addition of Drew Holiday has been very, 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 very important. And again, PJ Tucker and like you said, Chris Middleton, who now he can really do his thing and just concentrate on shooting the basketball, scoring the basketball. Doesn't have to worry about, doesn't have the weight on his shoulders of having to live up to the second best player on the team and he's an all-star, but is he really the second guy or is he really a third guy? He can just settle down, play his game. He can knock down shots. He's silky smooth. Almost reminds me of the Iceman, George Gervin. But Miami. I don't know what's going on with Jimmy Butler. You know who Jimmy Butler is starting to look like right now? He's starting to look like the Jimmy Butler that first came into the NBA that wasn't noted for his offensive game. He's starting to look like that type of Jimmy Butler. He's never been a guy. He's never been a Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler has never been a guy that's going to wow you with his athleticism where he can just take it to the rack and just yam on you and just really use his athleticism to defeat his opponent. And he's never been a great shooter, but I've been surprised on how inefficient he's been, on how he hasn't seemed to be very inspiring to his teammates because the ball won't drop. The ball will not drop in the basket, and he just looks like the Jimmy. And he hasn't been playing that tenacious defense, like you said. They got ran out the gym early last night, so he didn't even have a chance to put his imprint on the game. Now, of course, they're going back to Miami. You may see Jimmy Butler go for 30 and just look like the Jimmy Butler from the past few seasons, but he hasn't looked like that Jimmy Butler as of late. And again, he's looking more like the Jimmy Butler that first came into the league that was noted for his defensive exploits, even though that hasn't been the same. So we'll see what Miami does, man. I mean, Eric Spoelstra is a great coach. He's noted for his adjustments. So let's see what type of adjustments he makes moving forward. Of course, they're going to be in Miami. I don't know how many people are going to be in the stands, but I think Jimmy Butler, with his competitive nature and competitive spirit, his warrior mentality, I think he's going to come out with guns blazing, but it all boils down to making shots. But where they have to bring it, the Miami Heat have to bring it on the defensive end. But maybe Milwaukee is just that much better this year, Eddie.
Hey, it's all about when you hit your stride and when you hit your peak. And right now, especially after that game, Milwaukee looks like they're peaking.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the New York Knicks and their series against the Atlanta Hawks in a game that came down to the wire. Trae Young, floater at the end for the win. But the Knicks, man, looking live. It's cool to see D Rose, play point guard for that team, play in the playoffs. It's almost, if you don't watch the Knicks, you almost forget about him. You know, he's been in the league for so long.
Yeah.
You forget that. It's almost amazing to me, as bad as he tore up his knee, that he's still able to do some of the things that he can do. But that looks like it's shaping up to be a really tough series. They had Spike Lee going nuts on the sideline,
right.
jumping up and down.
Right.
That's an exciting series. I'm enjoying watching. Give me your thoughts on it, Greg. What do you think is going to happen in Atlanta? I like Atlanta in the series. I'll tell you real quick. I do like Atlanta in the series. But I think this is certainly one that could go 7 if New York
that's where I was about
down.
to go. Yeah, I think it definitely can go 7, and I like the way the Knicks play, and I like the way the Hawks play. You posed a question about a month ago on my thoughts of the Atlanta Hawks in the playoffs and their chances. And I said, hey, with Trae Young at the helm, anything is possible. And that's exactly what happened in game 1. You see where the New York mayor come out today and was trolling Trae Young, talking about quit trying to get all these fouls. And I'm like, bro, that's the name of the game. If Trae Young can get to the line and if the refs are going to call it, that's what he's supposed to do if it puts his team in the best position to succeed. But I love what the Knicks are doing as well. It wouldn't obviously the Knicks. I think the Knicks will probably win game 2, and they will go back to Atlanta tied up 1-1. But Trae Young and Atlanta Hawks, they have some talent on that team. And Nate McMillan, a guy that's been there, done that, a guy that's been in the playoffs as a player and a coach, so he knows what it takes. He knows what his players. He knows the mindset that his players have to be in and how to motivate these guys. And again, with Trae Young, the guy is just playing at a high level. I mean, he is a superstar right now, and he's putting the Atlanta Hawks on his back, and he willed that team to a victory in game 1. And but again, like you said, I can definitely see that series going 7 games because I like what R.J. Barrett is doing. Of course, Julius Randle, you can almost talk about him as far as an MVP candidate this past season, and they have a myriad of other guys that can get it done. So both of these teams' trajectory moving forward, or I'm talking about it, the sky's the limit for both of these teams, and I can see that series going 7 as well.
Man, you bring up a good point about Julius Randle and how well he's played. It just makes me wonder, like, he's played above expectations. I think he's taken his game to another level. But what if he's just been playing out of his mind and now he's like a really good stock that's about to go on to decline? If any of you guys have Dogecoin, you know what I'm talking about. It's just kind of gradually going down
right.
after reaching a tremendous peak.
Yeah.
Could that be what's going on with Julius Randle? I don't think so.
I don't think so
But
at all.
if so,
I think he's
I think that could spell trouble for the future. I'm going to watch the Knicks closely.
He's only like 27.
See how I understand that, but
Yeah.
you do understand what I'm saying. Sometimes players have these
they have
great
that breakout
seasons.
season. Like I talk about pitchers in MLB.
Yeah, and then they regress back to what we would call the mean or the average, and he's that type of player that I think is a candidate for that. I'm not saying he is or isn't doing that. I just think that he's a candidate for that type
you know what, Ed?
backslide.
I actually don't think so because, here's why. I think if you look at Julius Randle, now, of course, high school is high school, but he was maybe the top or at least the second highest rated high school player.
Oh, I remember when they drafted him. Number 1, or where did he go? What number exactly was it? Was it number 1 with the Lakers, or I know it was a top 3
No, I think it was
pick.
like I don't even think it. I can't remember if it was, but he was a lottery pick. I know that much.
I'll have to look it up. I think he was. If he didn't go first, he went 2nd or 3rd. I want to say. Let me look it up.
Maybe even 7th. I think, but I know he's a lottery pick.
Maybe.
But the thing about Julius Randle is, I thought he was good with the Lakers, and I thought he's been good.
You do have a knack for that.
Yes, I thought he was good, and I actually
pick 7.
Pick 7. Okay, pick 7. Okay. So just had to go to my memory bank right there, but. I think Julius Randle is actually a guy that's even going to get better because he can do so many things on the floor. I've always thought Julius Randle was a good player. Now I think he's really, of course, he's entering his prime as an athlete, and he can do so much. I mean, he's always been a good ball handler. I mean, I liked him even when he was with the Lakers, but of course he was overshadowed. But he's a very good ball handler for his size. The guy can knock down the three. He can take you off the dribble. I mean, he can do a lot of things. He can pass the ball. He sees the floor well. So I think with his basketball IQ and his all-around game, Julius Randle is only going to get better. And then he has some players around him in New York where, like R.J. Barrett and these guys, where the game, he's not going to feel all the pressure because he has talent around him. So whenever he wants to distribute the basketball, he has guys that can make shots. But I think Julius Randle, with the coaching of Tom Thibodeau, he's going to even get better as a defensive player. Now he's locked in on the defensive side because you know what the New York Knicks bring as far as the mentality, as far as a Tim Thibodeau-led team, even though I've been critical of Thibodeau in the past, but make no mistake about his coaching acumen.
Julius Randle is going to be the 2021 Most Improved Player of the Year.
Right on.
Let me give you a few of those names, and let's see, because I think there's a couple of guys that have continued to go up, and there may be a couple guys that have gone down. Mm-hmm. The most recent winner is Brandon Ingram. I'd say the jury's still out with that guy. He's kind of stayed the same. I don't think he's continued to grow as much as you might have thought.
Well, because the team didn't have the success.
He hadn't dropped back either.
So it really seems
Pascal
like that.
Siakam, a guy who we think he not only became the most
he seemed like he's regressed.
This year he has.
This past season.
But just a year ago, he went to superstar level.
He did.
And then right under him, you've got Victor Oladipo.
Hey, speaking of, man, you know what? I'm glad
so
you
these
brought up
things
Victor
can go
Oladipo.
either way.
True.
And so Julius Randle's just the guy I'm going to keep my eye on.
Okay. Real quick, as far as Victor Oladipo, and I hope he gets well soon, but what did I tell you? What was I talking about when the Rockets made the move for him, about they don't even know if his quad is okay. And obviously the quad was not okay. He's had another surgery, and he's probably messed himself out of a lot of money. But I'm glad he had the other surgery, and maybe he can come back healthy, come back strong, and live up and be the Victor Oladipo that we know. Because I like him as a player, but I never thought that quad was all the way healed. So obviously that turned out to be the case. So he was on the shelf again with another surgery. So we'll see what happens with him. But
just below Victor Oladipo, then you get into a few guys where you think that if he turns out to be one of these guys, then you hit a home run. Giannis Antetokounmpo, C.J. McCollum, Jimmy Butler, Goran Dragic, and Paul George, and the list goes on. But
real quick,
go ahead.
Oh no. Well, speaking of C.J. McCollum, Dame Dollar, and those guys. Now, of course, we haven't talked about the Mavericks.
We've got to get them
yet.
and the Mavericks in there, and then we're moving on.
Go whichever one you want to go to first.
Well, you got it. You're right there. Go ahead and talk about the
Portland and Denver. Well, Portland took game one because of the exploits of Dame Dollar, and they just took game one. Simple as that. They took game one, and they played like we know Portland can play.
Hey, they can jump on you and surprise you.
Yeah, they can. That's what I'm saying.
They're that kind of team, you know.
They can. So you never know about Portland. It's like, which Portland team are you going to get?
Lillard, he's like a mongoose who just comes out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And then you have McCollum. You have Jurkic, who you never know what you're going to get out of him. He's still trying to find his legs. But
I think they exploited that weakness there, too.
Huh?
They exploited that greatly. Denver
last night.
Yeah,
they did. Jokic in Denver, now they felt like that their backs were against the wall playing down 0-1. They were in an 0-1 deficit to Portland. And, of course, playing at home, and you definitely do not want to go back to Portland down 0-2. So Jokic, the Joker, like I said earlier, he wasn't joking last night. And he hasn't been joking all season because he's probably going to be the MVP of the league. But the Joker went for 38 last night, 38, 8, and 5. And that guy right there, Jokic, I'm looking for the stats right here. Okay, Dame went for 42. He had 32 in the first half. Then they switched Aaron Gordon on him. Aaron Gordon, athletic, long defender, 6'9", 6'10", can move his feet. Of course, Dame said they threw some double teams at him. But Aaron Gordon did hinder his shot some. And so we'll see what adjustments Portland makes to free up Dame Dollar if Portland or if Denver wants to put Aaron Gordon on him for the majority of the game and not let him go off at the start of the game. I heard Charles Barkley last night saying that now they need to run Dame Dollar around and make Aaron Gordon chase him. So, of course, Portland is going to make some adjustments So we'll see
Hey,
what happens with that.
you're definitely right about they felt like their backs against the wall. I think if you go back to last year in the conference finals against the Lakers, they dropped the first two games. Then they go into back against the wall mode. They win the third game, but ultimately it's not enough. You already gave life to the other team.
Absolutely.
You already gave them the momentum, and the Lakers went on to win the rest of that series in 5. I think the Denver Nuggets have that in the back of their mind, so certainly they were playing with a little extra vigor. Did not want to go down 0-2 again. Anytime they've gone down 0-2, they have lost that series.
There it is. So I'm sure that they were aware of the fact that they've lost the series going down 0-2. And just the odds period in the NBA when you go down 0-2 are like almost slim to none. I mean,
I'm just looking at going
back
back to 2012. They went down 0-2. The Lakers lost that series. 2010-11. They went down 0-3, of course, lost that series. And then most recently in the conference finals, they're down 0-2 against the Lakers, and they lose that series. The odds, you're right, are against you. But this team, as hungry as they are now, as close as they've been able to get, and going through the tribulations, they are losing Murray. Is still every bit as hungry as they've ever been, and they're going to try to keep that ship, on the path going towards. They want another shot at whoever makes it to the conference finals. I think they feel like Jokic has what it takes to carry them beyond that into an NBA finals appearance. It just remains to be seen who they're going to match up against if they get that far. But I think they're well on their way.
I agree.
Portland tends to do this. They have a few games in a series where they can really jump up and hurt you, but ultimately their offense is a little bit chaotic.
Then they'll lay down.
You know what I mean? It's chaotic, so it doesn't always click on all cylinders.
True.
Things have to fall into place. Breaks have to go your way. There were a lot of loose
They're
balls.
so guard oriented.
Yeah, there was a lot of loose balls
oriented
that went their way in the last game. And when you don't have any structure to your offense, when you struggle, it shows.
Yeah, I agree.
And I feel like you've got some games from the Portland Trailblazers where you're going to see that coming up, and you're going to see the Denver Nuggets take advantage of that and
hey, you know what?
Be on their way to round number 2.
There it is. And I think Denver wins that series ultimately as well. And one thing about Jokic, you mentioned that they lost Jamal Murray, and that's a great point. And they've been playing at even at higher level since then, since Jamal. Now, of course, you don't want to lose an all-star like Jamal Murray, the point guard of your team. But what it's done, it's allowed Jokic, even though he's always been a guy that can distribute the basketball and initiate the offense, now he's pretty much the guy now getting everybody else involved. And these other guys are making shots. They're making shots. They're stepping up. They're picking up the slack. The addition of Aaron Gordon was very helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, not only on the offensive end, as far as rebounding and second chance shots and things of that sort, but again, on the defense side of the ball, and you saw what he can do. You saw his impact last night in a playoff game. And the reason that you get him to make the impact that he did, but these guys are making shots. And then you have a guy like Michael Porter Jr., who who I said who actually would have maybe been the first pick in the draft before he went to Missouri and hurt his back and only played a couple of games at Missouri. But now he's really coming into his own. So he's the second guy now. He's feeling like a guy that feels like he should have been a number 1 pick. He's playing at a high level. And like you said, you have Jokic, the Joker, who's going to be the MVP this season. And he's just getting all these guys involved. They're all following his lead. They feel very confident, and they're knocking down shots. And they're just playing at a high level right now.
Think about particularly how they match up against the Blazers. Think about when you take your offense and you turn it and you run it inside out with a guy like the Joker, and now you're forcing a guy like Nurkic to come out of his comfort zone and to move around a lot more than I think they really want him to, or that he may be in condition to do. I mean, I know he's been back from that injury for a while, but when you've got him trying to chase around the Joker, it's not the same. It's different. It's a different task than hanging out down in the paint and banging with the other big.
Especially a guy that's so versatile.
It is a tall task. Yes, right. He's had Nurkic head spinning around on his shoulders. You could tell he looks a little bit lost out there trying to defend this guy. I think that was the perfect way to exploit what is the Portland Trailblazers as it pertains to the matchup with the Nuggets, which is their weakest link, which is a pretty damn good player in Nurkic.
Hey, there it is. And Nurkic has to get his feet back under him. And like you said, they've definitely been going at him. And he has his hands.
Hey, we talked about how him coming back might actually make them a candidate.
I thought that was going to, right. Because he's
go
a big
deeper
body.
into the playoffs.
Yes, because I thought, my thinking was, and I think both of our thinking was, that the fact that now, since they're so guard-oriented, maybe the addition of this 7-footer would actually give them that presence down low where they can dump the ball down to him. He can get some easy baskets. He can get some rebounds. He can control the paint, control the boards, and they won't be so dependent on their guards. But we all know
it just
Portland
takes time to incorporate
him. That's true. That's true.
When you're adding that part to your offense,
right?
Especially an offense that we just mentioned before, is chaotic and really unorthodox. It seems like at times.
Right on.
And maybe that's how Terry Stotts likes it. But whenever you're trying to play a team that is as good and plays as clean a game as the Nuggets do, and is as precise as they are, then it makes it really hard. You better be hitting all those shots.
Bingo.
And then those step back threes and those 45-footers that Damian Lillard hits. He's an amazing player.
Man.
But
he won from the logo.
Yeah. And it's not the first time. Nikolai Jokic really puts a lot of stress on the weakest point in their pipes and pressure bust pipes, and that one's about to burst. Denver Nuggets on their way. I think so.
You know what? I think Denver wins that series as well, but I'm not going to predict on how quick because of the exploits of Dame Dollar, and C.J. McCollum can go off at any time. Of course, like I said, it goes without saying. Of course, Denver has to continue to make shots as well. So we'll see. But I think a lot of these series, one thing I noticed about the playoffs in the first round before we move on to some NFL or MLB, whatever Eddie wants to talk about, one thing I've noticed early on in most of these series is how competitive they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's going to be some very competitive series, it seems like. Some that may go the distance to 7 games. But I'm talking about it's some good competitive ball games. And hey, this is not a COVID season right here. And this is not the bubble. So a lot of these home teams are going to have some real crowd noise behind them. And they're going to feed off that energy. And so these teams that go on the road now, everything is not going to be evenly matched. So we're really going to see some true NBA basketball, playoff basketball, and who's going to succumb to the pressure. And some of these young teams are going to have to grow up real fast, especially when they go on the road. Just like I said, you see how quick Memphis was able to get them a game. Now let's see if they can continue, if they can be experienced enough and savvy enough to continue to keep their feet on the ground, or to keep their foot on the pedal, so to speak. And let's see if they can continue and even take game 2. You can't be satisfied with winning one game. You have to come in with the same mentality. Now, granted, the other team, your opponent, is going to be playing with desperation, and they may just be better than you that night, but you can't lack off on the defensive side of the ball, and you have to try to take 2. I don't believe in this where we're happy with a split. You have to try to take 2. At least do everything in your power to do so. So we'll see what happens tonight. A lot of great games.
The final series we're going to talk about before we move on, and you can't leave out, Greg loves his Dallas ties. He loves the Cowboys, and I know he loves him some Luka Doncic.
I love Luka. I'm not crazy about the Mavs,
but he loves Luka.
I love Luka.
It makes him worth watching, doesn't it?
Oh, man. And the thing about it, Eddie, it's interesting that you say that. And I've always been a guy. Of course, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and I've always been a guy because of Tony Dorsett back in the day, my favorite player of all time. And I've always been a guy, if I have a favorite player, I don't see how you can root against that team, or how you can have a favorite player and not root for that team. The only thing with Luka is he plays for the Dallas Mavericks, and that's too much Dallas for me because I'm a Houston guy.
Even I'm a little surprised to hear that.
because
if they put a star on their uniform, he'll welcome him into his home.
But you know what? That's too much Dallas for me. But at the same time, I say that when I watch them play, I have to root for them because I want Luka to succeed. But it's not like, oh, man, the Dallas Mavericks. I don't. But as far as a Luka fan, that is my guy. And the Clippers, they're going to have to bring it tonight.
Aren't they not a team, Greg, that looks like, I mean, it was just a couple years ago. You couldn't get away from thinking they were the favorite every year going into it. The Lakers had to make the biggest blockbuster deal in the NBA prior to the James Harden trade just to have a chance, and to ultimately they end up overcoming these Los Angeles Clippers. Right now, it looks like things could be starting to unwind, and we could see that team break apart. Do you think Game 1? I mean, Dallas was in control pretty much the entire time. It seemed like. Do you think that was a microcosm of this entire series? And do you think that the Lakers are about to face a situation where they're going to have to blow this whole thing up and start over? I mean, I'm sorry, the Clippers.
Okay. You know what? Time will tell. I think if they go down 0-2, it may be some panic because
let's just say if they lose this series.
Okay. If they lose this, definitely. If they lose a series, I think it's definitely going to be some changes, and Kawhi may want out, and who knows?
You're
because
already
you're
hearing
talking about a
rumors,
team.
and you know how I feel about that.
Okay, well, I want to get your take on that in a second, Eddie. I'm glad you brought that up. Brooks, what's good? And so, so the thing about it is, the Clippers, a team with all that talent, so many people expect them to make it to the championship, just like the team that they were last year when they got ousted early on in the bubble, and they disappointed a lot of people when everybody thought that they were going to make a run at the championship. You have Kawhi Leonard, you have Paul George. I like the way Pat Beverly has been playing. I mean, he's
a
improved.
playoff basketball caliber point guard any way you cut it.
And he's improved as a shooter. Now you have to respect his three-point shot or his ability to shoot the basketball. He's not a guy that's just going to knock it down on a consistent basis. But I like the fact that Pat Beverly has improved on the offensive side of the ball. And then you have Rondo, who I thought would probably be starting. I thought Tyronn Lue would start Rondo. Obviously, they're going for the defense, and they're trying to establish their defensive identity early on. At least I think that's the mentality of Tyronn Lue, because I don't see why you just don't start Rajon Rondo, playoff Rondo, and let him get things rolling on the offensive side, and also that will energize them as far as to play some defense. I just think Rondo is the guy who should be starting that game. Then you bring in Pat Beverly about 6 minutes in the first quarter, and you have him clamp down and do his thing on the defense side of the ball. But obviously Tyronn Lue is going to do what he want to do. But Luka, I don't care what you throw at Luka. I mean, the Mavericks, you talking about being very impressed. When they have a full complement of players, you know Luka's going to do his thing. When Porzingis is healthy, hopefully he can stay healthy. That's the second star that Luka has right there. A guy that's 7'3", that can do a little bit of everything. And so you have Porzingis. Then you have guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Jalen Brunson,
and
Finney
don't
Smith.
Forget about Finney Smith. I love that guy. He is a steady Eddie, and he's always going to bring it. He's steadily above average. It's not like you're just getting the bare minimum from him. No, that guy is a legitimate threat to cut to the basket at times, to score the basketball. He shot well from behind the arc. He's done a little bit of everything.
All of them did.
They're starting to look, like
they have a well-rounded team.
Yeah,
they have a well-rounded team.
You took the words right out of my mouth. They're starting to look like a very solid and deep team.
And before I get your take on Kawhi Leonard real quick, and the thing about the Mavs is, Luka, I don't care what you throw at Luka. He's going to – okay, you're going to trap him? Well, if these guys continue to make shots, and you have got Jalen Brunson, Tim Hardaway, Finney Smith, they can create for themselves. They can take you off the bounce. So it's not like Luka, you're going to be able to trap Luka and everything is contingent upon them just making three-point shots. If you run out and try to take away the three-point, for one, if you trap him, somebody's going to be open. But not only that, they're athletic enough to cut to the basket, to get to the basket, and make things happen. And then you have a Porzingis who can do his thing. So now they're talking about putting Kawhi Leonard on Luka early. That may hinder Luka for a second, but again, pick your poison. If those other guys are playing at a good level, at a high level, I mean, I don't care what you throw at Luka. Luka's going to make the right play, going to make the right decision. And I tell you what, if you want to get anything from Kawhi on the offensive side of the ball, I'll advise you don't put him on Luka the entire game, because Luka's going to get his. So, but what do you think about Kawhi and him supposedly maybe wanting out if this ends in a Clippers loss? Series-wise.
I honestly think it's laughable. I'm just getting tired of, and I'm not going to go at these players. I'm just getting tired of players not being culpable or liable for their role in their team's failure. It seems like the new norm is to just force your way out or go somewhere else or pick up a new coach. Do something to where it's never the player's fault. We dealt with it here in Houston with James Harden. To him, it was the franchise's fault that things started to unravel, when really he was right there, involved and engaged in every move that they made. Mm-hmm. You look at Aaron Rodgers, and now he wants out of Green Bay because of him being at odds with the front office, but yet, is he going to take responsibility for his inability to get that team over the hump? Because he can say anything he wants about how they drafted, because they got Jordan Love, whatever. He had enough talent to win. That team was good enough to win. They could have beaten the Bucks, and he could have made more plays that we've seen him make all throughout his career. Okay, it's
You know
not
what's
up.
interesting?
It's not and real. It's not just him. I mean, we can go the list. It's getting long. Just, we can say you could add Deshaun Watson to that list. You could add multiple players to that list. And if Kawhi Leonard does that, I mean, where does it end? When you think about players back in the day, you think about the Jordans, the Celtics. They were, Larry Bird and the Celtics. They were tied to their teams forever. And if those teams fail, do you think that they're just going to pack up and go somewhere else? I think we saw it with Kevin Durant and with the Warriors. Maybe that's even where it started. I don't know. Maybe it started with LeBron.
Right. I was just about to go there. Who knows?
But it's not just basketball. Like it's spread out like a poison throughout all sports. You know
what?
I think the place where you see it the least might be baseball.
Right.
But
Right.
but still, it's even present there.
Right.
But
Right.
it is now the new norm, and I hate it. It just rubs me the wrong way. It is the new norm now. If you're not winning a championship, or if you fell in the playoffs and you're outed,
Just pack my bags.
Yeah, it's not
Let's
your
go
fault.
somewhere
It's the team. I mean, because think about it. We're talking about the Clippers here. All right, they're about to not get it even as far as they did last year.
Yeah.
They're about to have a worse exit than they had last year. And what's the first thing they did when they were done? They moved on from a very good coach in Doc Rivers, which I'm not so sure that was the right move. Maybe it was good for him to have a fresh start. Good for them. But are they better? No. And you look at the organization, they're siding with the player over the coach. Because at any time, they could have decided, hey, we're going to put Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the trade block, and they would have had many suitors. They could have done things completely different. But they stuck with the players. They gave them a coach that they wanted. Because I know Doc Rivers fought that, the resting, the Kawhi Leonard's running his own schedule and deciding when he was going to take games off and when he was going to practice. I know Doc hated that.
Yeah.
So they went with what would make the players happy. And look, as of right now, it's not working. So what's next?
You know what? The thing about it is, and that's interesting, man. I like that topic right there. The thing about it is, so you're saying that too many other players are playing the blame game right now, especially in basketball and football. And the thing about it is like these guys, like I always like to say, they feel so entitled. And they're making so much money these days, they have more power than the coach. So whenever they feel like something is going awry, they feel they can bolt at any time because, hey, look, I make such and such amount of money, and this is how it's going to be, and blah, blah, blah. And they don't take a look at themselves and maybe how they could have been better. If you look at Kawhi last year in the bubble in the playoffs, maybe his personality or lack thereof, so to speak, maybe hindered his team to a degree again. And everybody has their own personality. I mean, and he doesn't have to be the rah-rah guy, but maybe his lack of really being a leader in the sense of getting in these guys' ears and telling them things that they probably don't need to hear or want to hear or that they don't want to hear, maybe his lack of doing that maybe hindered the team's success. And so you bring in a guy like Rajon Rondo. That's why I say you put Rondo in a starting lineup and make these players around him feel like that they have a guy at point guard that's going to run the ship, that's going to steer the ship. And, of course, Rajon Rondo's playoff success. And, hell, Patrick Beverley is a backup point guard anyway. So I don't get that move right there. I don't know why Rajon Rondo is not in the starting lineup. We'll see what kind of adjustments that they make on that, Ty Lue makes in that regard. And as far as Aaron Rodgers, and we can go on and on. We can talk about Deshaun Watson, who's not in camp right now.
And one thing I will say about Watson, and if you haven't heard, Deshaun Watson still wants a trade. He still no longer wants to play for the Texans. But one thing I will say, like guys like Watson and who else was I thinking of? Guys that LeBron when he first left Cleveland. There's a difference whenever you're giving everything you got and you realize like it's just not going to happen there. I think in Houston you saw Deshaun, despite his off the field issues, give everything that he had.
Yes.
And the organization seemed to just be going in a different direction. With LeBron, he gave Cleveland everything he had.
He did.
And then he made it right by going back and winning a championship there. I think I can give those types of guys a pass.
Right.
It's the guys that the organizations give everything to them. They give them their friends to play with. They go and get the guys they want. They hire the coaches, the Tyronn Lues, the guys who are the player coaches, the ones who are going to let the players do what they want to do. They give the players everything they want. And in the end, when the player doesn't have success, it's the organization's fault. And I just can't get behind that.
No, I got you. And you know what? And as far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned in that situation, I mean, that's where his gripe is. And of course, Aaron Rodgers, who won the MVP last year, if you listen to his comments, he's pretty much saying that it's a culture thing and it's a philosophy thing. And that's his way. That's Aaron Rodgers saying, and a character issue with the team. And that's Aaron Rodgers' way of playing the blame game, saying that hey, you don't let me in on these decisions and on these draft picks. And this is what you get. You get an MVP, you get a quarterback. And so this is what he's riding on. You get a quarterback who wins another MVP, but we don't ultimately get over the hump because you don't acquiesce to my wants and needs and things that I think can help the team better as far as not only the draft picks. If we maybe would have had a few different draft picks, maybe we would have won that game against Tampa. But not only that, not only that, what it does is, in essence, what I think he's saying is, without actually saying, what it does is the culture is interrupted because now you have a disgruntled quarterback, a guy who's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now you see who y'all not F with now. Now you have me disgruntled, and what it does, you have my teammates around me who's seeing the fact that I'm disgruntled and that I'm mad. They see the turmoil going on within the organization because I ultimately can't get my way. And you all's philosophy is you shut up and play ball. We run the organization. So you see, I don't like you all's philosophy. You see what your philosophy has done to the culture because now my teammates, there's division, there's strife in the locker room because they don't know which way the team is going because y'all have me pissed off now. So this is how it is. Some people may be agreeing with me. Some may not be. So that messes with the culture. And then the character of the team is you're not listening to me. And so therefore, if you're not listening to me and taking my input on certain people that you get rid of, that doesn't help the culture because we don't have the right players as a whole on the team to establish the culture, and I can't do it by myself. So now I want out. But here's the flip side of that. I think now you have Jordan Love. You have Jordan Love, who's actually, he's in camp now as a starting quarterback. Of course, there's a learning curve, but I promise you, Eddie, I honestly think Green Bay, as crazy as it may sound, now they got to the precipice of the Super Bowl last year. And one would think, logically speaking, no way they would want to get rid of Aaron Rodgers. No way LaFleur would want Aaron Rodgers to leave when the next step is probably the Super Bowl. Okay, they're saying all the right things in the media, but in my humble opinion, I think this is playing out exactly the way Green Bay wanted. Now, of course, they're saying, oh, but we want him back. I think they wanted to run Aaron Rodgers out of town so they can get Jordan Love in there. LaFleur can really have his imprint on the team and really establish the culture the way he wants because you have a guy in Aaron Rodgers who's an alpha. And, of course, you want a quarterback that's confident and all this and that. But maybe LaFleur wants to get this guy in there more sooner than later so he can put his imprint on the team. And LaFleur probably feels that he's as good a coach. He's so much of a good coach that if he can coach up this guy real quick, they can still probably win. So now what they've done, they have Aaron Rodgers. They ran him out of town. They're pretty much essentially running him out of town. So now they can sit back and say, hey, well, we tried everything we could. We went to his house. We said everything in the media, and the guy just doesn't want to be here. Now, public relation-wise, they don't look bad in the media, but I know better than that, man. They ultimately ran Aaron Rodgers out of town by the way they've conducted business. And Aaron Rodgers may be wrong for some of the things that maybe he wanted and maybe he should have stayed in his lane. But that's the way it goes these days, man. And a lot of these players are jumping on board with that. And now he's looking at it like, I'm an MVP of the league. MVP. So what can you say now? Look, I'm an MVP, and we still didn't go to the Super Bowl. But that's not on me. That's on y'all. And I agree that a lot of these guys are blaming it on the organization.
Look, the first thing I noticed whenever we talked about, or when I heard you talk about, Aaron Rodgers, his standpoint is the word me. Like, Aaron Rodgers,
he's a me guy.
He's selfish. Yeah, he's a me guy. And look, I love the guy as a player. He's the Hail Mary king. If you need a Hail Mary all through NFL history, I think, it's him and him
right
is
on.
Who you choose. If you want to go back to college, you'll pick Flutie.
Yeah.
But I think Aaron Rodgers, he's got a knack for it. He's definitely a great player. But you see this whenever we talk about these guys,
they say he can be an a-hole.
the ones who are blaming the
I don't know him.
organization for their failures. You see that they're more me guys. Is it more important for the team that they listen to Aaron? I mean, is there a guarantee that Aaron's input is going to? I get that, but I think about Tom Brady. Don't you think Tom Brady would have loved to play extended periods of time with Jordy and Nelson? Don't you think he would have loved to play extended periods of time with Devontae Adams, with Aaron Jones? He never got guys like that. They didn't spend that type of money on the offense. They would develop these guys. They would find a Wes Welker. They would develop a Julian Edelman. They might rent a Randy Moss for a year, or they might bring in Josh Gordon and see if it works. But they're not going, because if it was up to Brady, he would be having these guys drafted every year. He would go after players that were going to make the offense better.
Point.
And nobody's going to say that he would be right or wrong. But here's the deal. He understood his place in that organization. And for it to get wherever they needed to go, or where they wanted to go, which was a Super Bowl championship, then he had to fall in line. Because you have a general and you have a sergeant, and you still have to obey the orders, and the organization still has to have structure. And I'm sorry, but Aaron Rodgers is wrong in this one.
No, okay, I got
and
you.
I don't know if they're trying to run him out of town.
I don't know what's actually going on.
He's certainly wearing out his welcome, and he is the one who wants to go.
But I'll say this, though. I'm not going to necessarily say he's wrong. Now, maybe he's done some things wrong, and of course, I agree that he can be selfish, and they say he can be aloof, and he's a different guy personality-wise than Tom Brady. But maybe him just wanting them to include, the fact that they never drafted an offensive player other than the guy that was going to succeed him, it's different dynamics that was in New England. New England.
But would you ever hear Brady say that be a reason why he lost anything?
No.
He would say it was on him.
Maybe not. But the thing about it is, we'll never know because what Tom Brady was able to accomplish. Now, his first Super Bowl, it was predicated on the defense.
Yeah, it was only his second year in the league, and he was thrown into action by a Drew Bledsoe injury.
Yeah, right. So the fact that he was able to get off the schneid, and the fact that he saw, of course, you have one of the greatest coaches of all time in Bill Belichick. I think if Aaron Rodgers went to New England, he would act exactly like Tom Brady would, because he knew, like you said, he would know that he has to fall in line.
Yeah, I can get behind that point. I understand that.
I think the fact that the New England Patriots had so much success doing it the way they did, and Tom Brady was the orchestrator of that, I don't think he really had to say that much, because he's like, hey, well, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
We're winning, and he was smart enough to realize that they're winning it the way they're winning it, like doing it without him actually demanding this and demanding that, and knowing that he couldn't demand this and demand that. And so he fell right in line with it, also because he saw the success of the team as a whole. So,
I think it's just the kind of guy that he is.
And plus, he's that type of guy.
Aaron has the
he's that type of guy.
Even though he's an alpha. Understand that you want to talk about morale of the team and stuff like that. You have to realize how your team's going to react to the things that you do. And you can't blame it on the team if there's discord in the locker room, because you're showing discontent publicly in the media.
Well, that's what I said.
That's on Aaron Rodgers.
That's why I said he's saying
so hey, how can you blame that on the organization?
Quarterback, so look what's happening. So I think he's admitting that,
and that
without
just
actually
shows
saying
that his own feelings and how he's felt and perceived by his organization, that is more important to him than the overall well-being of the team. He may act like it's all about winning a Super Bowl, and because Aaron Rodgers wants to add one more to the trophy case, because there's a difference between the guys who have only been able to get one and the ones who have multiple.
But you know what, Eddie? I can see his point. Now, I
see it. I just think it's a selfish one. It puts yourself before the team, and the great ones shouldn't, in my opinion, do that.
Right, but that's the thing. I think Aaron Rodgers is more so looking at it like, not only am I one of the great ones, I'm probably one of the top 2 or 3 great ones of all time. And you mean you're never going to draft me a wide receiver, even though we have Devontae Adams and we have some players, and I'm continuing to lead you guys as far as we can go. And I just want some input.
Well, he's going to
go
still
not going to do it.
He's going to go somewhere where they're going to
give
him everything.
So it's just about respect with him. It's just not. It's about respect.
If he goes to Denver, they'll give him everything. They've got a tremendous young core of wide receivers,
and they still won't get to the Super Bowl
over there. Yeah, and when it doesn't happen, then it'll be because Green Bay waited around until Aaron got old.
Well, you know what? I think
it'll always be something for guys like that.
Yeah,
it'll always
but you know
be
what,
an excuse.
But you know what, though? I think at this point in his career,
and I'll still pick him on my fantasy team.
Right. I think at this point in his career, He just wants the respect of a lot of these other guys that they're
He's
getting.
got it, man.
But no. But he doesn't feel like he's getting as far
That's because he's
far as some
insane.
decision making. And look at it though. Look at it. They
He's
drafted
insane,
Jordan Love. They drafted Jordan Love. Now, if
How
I'm
the hell
Aaron
you
Rodgers,
think he got to Green Bay? They drafted him when they had Brett
but
Favre.
I'm saying true enough. But I'm saying they
He
haven't
should
drafted
understand how
any-
that organization works.
But he should. But he's just saying at this point in my career, y'all effed up and didn't include one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And none of I got you. And none of these decisions, and he just feels that he deserves more than that. But again, like I said, I think it's part of the game from Green Bay to get him up out of there and to go ahead. I mean, okay, we've used you up, Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, we got close to a Super Bowl last year, and our chances are probably even better with you on the team. But I'll just say this. I don't think they want Aaron Rodgers back as much as they're letting on. And I don't think Matt LaFleur wants him back as much as they're letting on.
You may be right. I don't know. I think they'd be crazy if that's the case.
Yeah,
you may be right. But you'll see
how much
how
posturing go on in the world today, man.
Yeah.
Some people sabotage themselves on hiring people, certain jobs, because they want to show, they want to posture and show that, hey, you're not gonna get me to do this. You're not gonna get me to do this, man. I mean, do what's best for you.
Well,
and
look,
do what's best
I
for
will
the
tell
team.
you this. I mean, we'll talk about number 33, Aaron Jones. A big reason why Green Bay has had the success that they have had. You can give Aaron all the credit. He's been spectacular. The quarterback does the majority of the work, but a lot of the dirty work has been done by Aaron Jones. And when they asked Aaron Jones if he talked to Rodgers before re-signing, because he was a free agent this offseason, he said no. And it wouldn't have mattered. Because whenever a guy like Aaron Rodgers, the guy that's supposed to be your leader, makes the kind of spectacle he's making in the media, it makes the other guys who fought their asses off and who worked their asses off to try to get to that goal y'all were all trying to achieve as a team, it belittles them. And it makes it look like they're insignificant to you. Aaron Rodgers, it may not be that the organization is done with them. For all we know, there may be certain guys in this locker room who carry a heavy load themselves who may be fed up with Aaron Rodgers and his act.
Right. I mean, that's why I started out by saying. So I agree that what he's doing is selfish, but on the flip side of it, I can understand him wanting a say-so in certain things. And the fact that if you look at Green Bay's, the way they've drafted over the years, it's almost like they're saying, hey, we're going to ride you until the cows come home, and we're not going to give you any offensive weapons. You make do with what you have, and we're going to do that. And no matter what you want, no matter how many years go by. Oh, but by the way, we're going to draft your successor right now. Yeah. So I think the dynamics are different, and that's why I said I think Aaron Rodgers is at a point where he's like, okay, you see what y'all did? Okay, now the locker room is split and blah, 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 and I don't want to come back anymore.
They're still pretty good. Devontae Adams is good. Robert Tonyan, that's a good tight end. Yeah. I mean, what was the guy he made the biggest fuss about? I know he made a fuss about Jordy Nelson when he was cut, but didn't he make a big fuss about Jake Cutterow or whoever the hell this guy is? An undrafted,
now stuff like that,
fifth, sixth string wide receiver. It shows you that he's got a distorted vision of how the team structure should be. And yeah, he is a damn good quarterback with those types of personalities. They end up wearing out their welcome in places. Think about T.O. and how great he was. I mean, I would have loved to have T.O. on the football team that I rooted for every year of his career. But the thing about it was because he was so me, and rubbed so many people the wrong way and didn't handle losing right, always was a finger pointer. Then the next thing you know, he's shipped out of town.
Great player. Love T.O.
Yeah, but tremendous talent. Aaron hasn't showed that throughout his career, but as we're getting later in the game, he's starting to, show his ass a little more and more. And I think it's tarnishing his legacy. I really do, man. I mean, they were talking about a guy who me and you, when we first got started with this show, I came on here and made the case that you could make a case that Aaron Rodgers is the most gifted quarterback to ever play. And then some guy, Pat Mahomes, came along and obliterated that,
And he's
But I mean, we've talked about him like that. How gifted he is with his arm, his ability to move outside the pocket, scramble, and improvise. At the drop of a hat, the guy is tremendous.
And I think that's how he's looking at it.
So many of your non, I'd say like football heads, like guys like me and you who can look past the personalities and just see the player.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how they look at the Hall of Fame. They don't talk about what you did off the field. They don't talk about what kind of person you were. They just talk about what kind of player you were and what you did on the field. Guys like us, you know, we can look past that, but the average fans, they start to hate these guys because of that. They start to really dislike them because they see them as selfish, which is one thing that rubs average people the wrong way, is when millionaires who are idolized by most people start to act really, really selfish and childish. And so his legacy.
I totally agree with that.
He's won a Super Bowl. He's always going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and a Hall of Famer. But when you talk about overall legacy and is there going to be any tarnish on that bronze and on that bust, I think there's going to be a little bit because of this.
That remains.
I mean, unless he goes and wins the Super Bowl, I guess if he goes and he flames out somewhere else, then
right. Well, here's why I say I don't think it does, because of the point that you said earlier about. I think most people is just going to look at it like, hey, that's the way it is today. That's the way today's players are, and the fact I think they're ultimately going to look at this.
Then you're going to have that guy that's like, they're soft. They're all soft.
Like, get off my lawn. But the thing about it is, though, I just think that's how a lot of people are going to. I just think that's how a lot of people are going to look at it, and the fact that they know that he is who he is. I think they'll look at it, and maybe some may look at it as, yeah, he was probably selfish, but I think a lot of people are going to look at it like maybe Aaron had a point in the way Green Bay handled things, and maybe because of who he is and how things should be these days, maybe Aaron did have a point, and so they'll maybe give him a pass on that. But it all remains to be seen how the remainder of his career plays out. I mean, he may ultimately end back up in Green Bay. At the end of the day, I mean, he's going to be finding some money. I mean, yeah, I think he's losing like 50-something thousand right now. But at the end of the day, if he ultimately misses training camp, it's going to be like, what, $50,000 a day? I mean, so we're going to see how much, if they don't trade him or whatever, we're going to see if he really is going to sit out and pay that type of money back to the organization. And right now, it's easy for everybody to take these sides and things of that sort because the NFL season is still a few months away, a ways away. So we'll see how things play out with that. But Julio Jones, do you think he'll be in Atlanta right now?
Oh, man, there's no way Julio Jones suits up for the Atlanta Falcons this season. They're going to move him. It's only a matter of where. Mm-hmm. And I know where you want him to go. I'm just going to throw you this bone. There's pictures circulating of Julio Jones in Dallas Cowboys gear.
I didn't even know that.
You didn't see that?
Who would they trade, though?
That's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering. But the trade talk is heating up.
Baltimore.
Tell me how, of course.
Patriots.
We know you want him to go in Dallas, but just as a trade prospect, let's talk about what Julio Jones has left in the tank and where he could make the biggest impact. Because I know it'd be nice to see him in Dallas, but to me, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. And I'm not going to say that I want to see him in Dallas if it's at the expense of one of these other young. Now, if we can get him in Dallas and keep all our other assets and don't get rid of like any defensive players that's on the come up. I mean, of course, you don't want to get rid of your first-round draft pick for this year, but you know what? He's not going to go to Dallas.
He's not going to command a first.
And he's not going to command a first. I think it's going to be a second or a third at this point. 32 years old. I mean, the guy has the most yards over a 7-year span, like over 10,000 and some yards, over a 7-year span, second only to Jerry Rice, the great Jerry Rice. And when he's healthy at 32 years old, I think he can still be a beast. But that's the thing with Julio Jones. The last 2 years, he's always hurt.
Are you drafting him on your fantasy team? I know I'm not. He's off my board every year because
foot, ankle.
Soft-ass foot. Man.
Yes, foot, ankle, hamstring. I mean, he's always injured. If he's healthy, if he's gotten himself healthy, the fit I would like to see him in Baltimore.
I mean, it makes his statistical accomplishments even that more impressive.
He's a beast now.
That he's injured so much. But it makes me wonder which one of these teams is willing to give up that kind of draft capital to go out and get a Julio Jones. And I immediately go to start thinking about contenders. Mm-hmm. I start thinking about the Green Bay Packers. I mean, I don't know if they'd be able to, if Atlanta would be as willing to trade them to Green Bay. But, I mean, if you've got a team giving you a second-round pick and nobody else is really offering that, and maybe they sweeten it up with somebody else, You got to make that move. But I look
Right.
at Green Bay. I look at Kansas City. Kansas City would love to jump up and snatch a guy like Julio. We've seen them go after guys like this late in their career. Well, who was the last one? Sammy Watkins.
Mm-hmm.
I know Sammy's no Julio, but he certainly is one hell of a receiver, one hell of a talent that they felt like if he comes in and gets hurt, it's not going to hinder them and hobble them. But when he's healthy, then they could really perform at their highest level.
Right.
And I think Julio would give them a tremendous
for real.
advantage in the red zone. I know they've already got Kelsey and Hill as a tremendous route runner as he is. But when you got the height
So
and
the rich get richer, huh?
yeah,
oh, man,
Julio
that would
Jones,
be crazy.
and then also you look at teams like the Colts. Is another team that
Okay.
could add a veteran wide receiver. You look at the young talent they have in their room, in the receiving room. Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell.
Yeah.
You add a veteran like, and then yes, they have Ty Hill, but you add a veteran like Julio Jones. That gives them some much needed height and some much needed threat outside the numbers.
What about Arizona? Speaking of height.
You know, did you see on Twitter,
team. Short quarterback, short receiving, Kirk.
Yeah.
I mean,
they
just started batting balls down
guy.
at the end of the season. Like, let's just bat the ball down.
Yeah, I don't know why they go after Julio. Yeah, because they've got good young receivers. They've got D-Hop. I don't know. I wonder what they would give up for him.
Yeah.
I feel like Arizona is a team that if I'm Atlanta, I'm going to make them pay a little bit more, or I'm going to make them give me one of their young, talented players over there that I seem to covet. Whenever, especially if I have suitors in the AFC or somewhere else that's not as close in proximity as those guys.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Now, speaking of wide receivers real quick, Eddie, before I get your take on some baseball, we still got about 15 minutes, so y'all stay with us. We're going to talk some MLB for a second, too. But speaking of wide receivers, I was watching something on the NFL Network a few days ago, and they had the NFL's 100, the all-time team. Jerry Rice, of course, was one of the receivers. Of course, Dion was one of the cornerbacks. And Jerry Rice was talking about how of course, he talked about, they showed his work ethic and him running the hills and how special he was in that regard as far as him always being in shape. And he talked about it. He was like, hey, his main thing was being in tremendous shape. But he was like, he said that his toughest opponent was Deion Sanders, and Deion said the same thing. As a matter of fact, he said, Deion, do you remember that time when they were going against each other? And you're talking about some classic matchups. Those two guys, I mean, both of those guys got the best of each other. I mean, if you had to call that matchup, if you had to pick a winner out of that matchup over their career when they played against each other, you would literally probably call that a draw because Deion got him a lot of times and Jerry Rice got him a lot of times. And to be honest with you, from a lot of the clips I was able to watch, Deion used to be on him. And Deion, and they both acknowledged that they were the toughest, playing against one another were the toughest, that they had to deal with in their careers. But you never forget the time, if you remember the time when Deion went out there when he was playing in Atlanta and he tried to shake Jerry Rice's hand before the game, and Jerry Rice didn't want to shake his hand because Jerry Rice was like, hey, there's no reason to shake your hand right now. Deion's perspective, when he came and talked about it, he was like, when they were doing the defensive backs, he was like, hey, man, he was just saying, Deion was like, he was saying, let's get it on.
Nah,
everybody
he might have been
in here
trying
came to see us.
put some grease or something on them sticky fingers.
But you know what?
You got to do something if you're going to try to beat Jerry.
Right. And of course, like I say, Jerry got him a lot, and
Put some
Deion got him a
popcorn
lot.
butter on there.
But those were the two best at their position of all time. But Deion talked about how he was coming out there like, let's get it on. And they asked him, and they were like, who was the toughest receiver you ever? He's like, Jerry Rice. Then he said, of course, Chris Carter and Michael Irvin. But he was like, Jerry Rice, he was like, man, it's time to get it on. But Deion was talking about how, as far as special teams are concerned, like, of course, he made the all-time team as a returner, too. And he was like, the one thing about special teams is all 10 of those players, they had to have an incentive. When he first got to Atlanta, his first punt return in Atlanta, which I watched when I was at Ohio State, his first punt return against the Rams in Atlanta, which he took back for a touchdown, he was like, he would tell his punt return team or his kickoff return team that if he get a touchdown, he would buy them all Gucci watches or Rolex watches. His first punt, so that was the incentive. That's why he was giving this return team a lot of credit. He was like, that's why he was able to be so special as a return man, not only because of the talent, but because of the fact that Talked about how he was a student of the game, how he studied film, and a lot of people didn't know that. He talked about how he studied film. But the fact that he gave his return team incentive, he said, hey, if I get a touchdown, I'll buy you all Gucci watches. So that's why he was seeing some tremendous holes to run through. And then when he got to Dallas, they had the 4 for the road. I mean, four touchdowns, 4 Rolexes. So, man, it was impressive to watch them. Then I watched Mean Joe Green talk about, how the Pittsburgh Steelers, how they set the tone in Pittsburgh, how the drafting of Jack Lambert helped set the tone, and the fact that back then, the continuity and he was talking about how much he was impressed with Bill Belichick for doing exactly what you talked about earlier, about how he could have his team could fluctuate from year in and year out, but he would continue to have that success. And me and Joe talked about one of the reasons they were so successful, obviously, was because they all grew up together and gelled together, and they had that continuity, and Jack Lambert helped set the tone for them. And then, of course, you had Tom Brady on there, one of the GOATs. I mean, that was very interesting to watch, man. But I thought that Deion Sanders and that, of course, you had Lawrence Taylor on there as well. But let me tell you what they said about Ed Reed real quick, who I think is the best free safety ever. Deion even said as much. And Ed Reed was making plays. I mean, you're talking about a ball hawk. Deion at corner and Ed Reed, but Ed Reed's the best free safety I've ever seen. And they showed a play on there, man, where Ed Reed actually baited Peyton Manning. He actually, a guy that studied a lot of film, but Peyton Manning even said he never seen a play where this guy, he completely turned his hips to the play because he had studied Peyton Manning enough to know if Peyton Manning faked that way, he's actually going to come back to that side. So what Ed Reed did in one of his picks against Peyton Manning was he was in the middle of the field, backpedal, and turned his hips completely the opposite direction.
Center field turn,
and Peyton Manning faked that way. But from watching film, Ed Reed said he knew he was going to eventually come back that direction. So Ed Reed turned one way and made a beeline, turned back, and came back and intercepted the ball completely on the other side of the field. Craziest play Bill Belichick say he's ever seen. But you're talking about two guys right there, man, that were the best at their position. I just want to throw that in there, man, because when I watched that show, it was like, wow.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the Deion Sanders and Jerry Rice. Those were my two top favorite football players growing up, hands down.
There it is.
Deion on the defensive side. I love the showmanship of prime time, the speed he played the game, and then Jerry Rice, the hardest working NFL player probably ever. A guy who was able to make an all-pro team in his 40s, and he's not a quarterback or a punter or a special teams player, which is unheard of these days. He did that wide receiver at, 42? Mm-hmm. That's amazing. But if you look at the matchup between those two guys, it's unfortunate that you didn't see them early on in Deion's career. I think as a rookie, he wouldn't put on Rice. They had two matchups. He didn't guard Rice. Rice goes off, of course. But every time he did guard him, he never shut him down, but he slowed him down.
You can't shut him down.
No, but you could tell that there were two unstoppable or unmovable forces against each other.
Yes.
Jerry Rice will put up catches like or lines like 6 for 44, no touchdown.
Right.
Maybe get a touchdown here and there. 4 for 45 with one touchdown in '92. I'm reading here.
Deion was on him like white on rice, man.
Yeah, but these are two guys, and what I like the most about these two guys, they are some old school hard nosed competitors.
That's what I like more than anything.
It wasn't about nothing else. Now, I know Deion liked to show off, but you can still take them fans out of the stands. And if it was just him and Jerry and nobody else out there, he's still going to go just as hard and give you everything he's got because he's that competitive.
That's what he was saying when he went out there to shake the hand. He was like, let's get it on. He knew Jerry Rice was the greatest at that time to ever play the game. He was like, hey, and I'm going to be the best corner to ever play. So I am not going to shy away from this matchup. Let's get it on and do what we do. And Deion made it a point. He said he never talked on the field. He never talked noise. And people didn't know how much of a student of the game he was. He said he would study the defense coordinators because players come and go. He would study the defense coordinators and study their tendencies. That's how he had an upper hand on a lot of these teams because he was like, he's going to do what he do. He's going to do. So he was like, to go along with his study habits and the talent and the work ethic that he had, he said he knew the sky was the limit. So that's what's up, man. But baseball, you want to talk some baseball before we get out of here?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Let's do
You
it.
want to start with the Astros? You want to start over there with the Padres?
Oh, you know what? Speaking of the Padres, I texted Eddie the other day, and I was like, "Hey, one thing about the Padres. Now, the Padres are a team that's blazing hot right now. Of course, the Dodgers are blazing hot. The Yankees are blazing hot. And that division with the Yankees, that is the toughest division. You got the Tampa Bay Rays, who I think as of yesterday won like 11 in a row. I don't know what the outcome was today or what time they play, but that division right there is a monster. Then the Boston Red Sox as well. That division is a monster right there. But the Padres, Fernando Tatis is back, mashing, hit two the other day. But one thing about Fernando Tatis, Vlad Guerrero Jr., who I've talked about the last couple of weeks, and Ronald Acuna Jr., I think quietly these guys, of course, Mike Trout is out for like 6 to 8 weeks with with an injury, a strained calf, I think it is. But I think these three guys are motivating each other from within quietly, and they're all mashing. All of them are at the top in the league and home runs, RBI, things of that sort. But you're talking about three tremendous players, superstars: Ronald Acuna Jr., Fernando Tatis Jr. I said Ronald Acuna Jr. Wait, is he a junior as well? Ronald Acuna.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Ronald Acuna Jr., Fernando Tatis Jr., and Vlad Guerrero Jr., they are the three top superstar baseball players in the game right now as far as position players. And real quick, Eddie, one team we never talk about who's a model of consistency, the San Francisco Giants, man. I mean, the San Francisco Giants, they just continue to mash. And you're talking about a team, that has like 4 World Series, I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I have to look up.
At one time, a few years ago, they had like about 3 out of 5 years. I mean, people don't talk about the San Francisco Giants, who's in that division with the Dodgers and the Padres. That's another tough division. But the San Francisco Giants are just a model of consistency as an organization. And I just want to give them their props.
And that's probably why with the resurgence of the Dodgers and how good they've been over the past 5, 6, 7 years, it's hard to to follow or to see or to look deeply into the Giants, because all the news, like if you're guys like me and you, we live in Houston. So if you want to get some in depth on the Giants, you're gonna have to listen to their radio stations. You're gonna have to go read their news articles from their beat writers. You may not get a whole lot outside of just basic highlights on ESPN. Whenever these teams, those networks are driven by teams like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, those big names.
Right, the Giants.
So the average, just the average fan, Giants, they fly right under the radar. And
I don't even know a player on that team that I can just name off the bat.
Right, being in the tough
division.
Posey,
Buster Posey.
Yeah. Being in the division that they're in, and as tough as it is another reason why, because they're going to continue to miss the playoffs as long as LA and San Diego are as good as they are.
There it is, man. Hey, so just want to give kudos to the Giants.
Now, speaking of the Dodgers in that division, they're in town right now playing against
the
Houston Astros, that hated Dodgers. They just took a 2-0 lead in the 4th inning.
Okay.
But I know you're as excited as I am to see these guys back. Not excited because I'm happy to see them. I'm hoping that the Astros can find a way to beat this team down. But the Dodgers definitely are the best team in baseball, clicking on all cylinders. I don't know how the Astros do it. They're coming off a 3-game sweep by the Texas Rangers in a series where the Rangers looked a lot better than their record says. But a lot of it has to do with the Astros shooting themselves in the foot. Christian Javier, you can't have 5 walks from the guy in 4 2/3 innings. You need your starters to go further than that. You need 5, 6 if you can get it out of them. It seems like the starters have been pitching well, but when they run into their hiccups, so do the Astros. But do you think the Astros are going to be able to bounce back, Greg, in this series against the Dodgers? I know they're down 2-0 now, but this is a team that's definitely got some grit. They played some close games against the Rangers. I know the Rangers aren't the Dodgers, but it clearly shows me, and we've seen all year long in the past, this is a team that doesn't roll over. They're going to fight. So this series, I think it's a 2-game series with the Dodgers, and they've got a 2-game series with the Padres.
Oh, man.
If I'm not mistaken, interleague play
That's
kicked
4 tough
off
games
in Houston, Texas. Real tough game. This is why after the 3-game slide that they just went on after being swept by the Rangers, this is why these 4 games, right now are very important. You don't want to lose too much ground to the Oakland A's, even though they're coming off a series win against those guys.
You know what? I think the Astros will be just fine. Of course, like we always say on this show, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So obviously, It's a long season, and there are going to be some slumps. There are a lot of teams and a lot of players that slump at certain points throughout the season. But what you want to do, you want to make sure you keep the slump to a minimum. You don't want to slump. You don't want to go on like a 7-game losing streak or something to that effect. Now, I do think hopefully they can salvage this game tonight against the Dodgers and hopefully split the series at the least, if not take both games. But
Dodgers coming in off a sweep of their own.
Right, the Dodgers are red hot
Giants.
as well.
Yeah.
The Dodgers are red hot as well. But the Astros, they'll be just fine. Again, I think is Jordan Alvarez, is he in the lineup?
He is, but Michael Brantley's not in the lineup today. He has some leg soreness, so he's sitting this one out. But he should be in the lineup tomorrow.
It's all about what is the pitching going to do, like you said. I mean, what can they get out of their starting pitching, and if they can go 5-6 innings into the game before they have to go to the bullpen. And like I always say, it's all about the pitching. Because now sometimes it's of course you have to score runs to win the game. I mean, you can have great pitching. If you don't score a run, you don't win the game. But sometimes the players can go in slumps as well. But I think the Astros, with that offensive power and that lineup, they'll be just fine. I was surprised that they lost 3 to the Rangers. I was very surprised at that. I didn't think the Rangers were that formidable to where they would come in and sweep the Astros. So the Astros, hopefully they can get their footing back. They can get those bats rolling, and they can keep the Dodgers at bay, so to speak, to where they don't just don't let them run amok and go off and just score a whole bunch of runs. Now, if they hold the Dodgers to 2 runs and they still lose tonight, then that's not on the pitching. Obviously, that's the offense has to get going. But there's going to be ebbs and flows throughout the season. And so, but I do think, to answer your question, I do think the Astros will be just fine, and I still think they'll win that division.
Yeah, I mean, we're all hoping so here in Houston. Here's the deal. I think a lot of stuff too, or a lot of attention needs to be paid to Dusty Baker and some of the decisions that he's making. I think sometimes, not all the time, I just think sometimes he's a little too tied into going with that old school way of thinking, particularly like lefty versus lefty, and doing some weird things with your lineup where you have, right, left, where you put the pressure on other squads to, want to burn through their relief pitchers because you've got guys that are batting on both sides of the plate. You bring in a guy for a righty on righty matchup. Well, there's a lefty right around the corner. But I think a lot of times, or it looks like lately, and I'm trying to remember who was in the game last week when I was watching. He was dealing, and to go lefty on lefty, they took that old boy out. I think it was Stanek was in there dealing, and they took Stanek out to bring in a lefty, and boom, base hit, run scores. Of course, hindsight's 2020.
Right.
But sometimes in baseball, I feel like a lot of managers, not just Dusty,
they overthink it.
They overthink it. And they go with that general. The odds are in our favor.
Right.
There's
the
better
analytics.
odds. Yeah, the analytics are in our favor. We go lefty on lefty. But man, if there's a guy dealing,
you
especially a big old boy like
you have to go with the hot hand.
Especially a big old boy like Stanek, man. I know sometimes he's up and down, but when he's good, boy, he's good. He's dealing upwards of 99 miles an hour, good breaking stuff. And he had it going that night, and I was just disappointed to see him or to see his his mound appearance cut short.
And you know what, Eddie?
On an old, I would say is not outdated, but just on old school analytics is just we're going to go with the lefty versus the lefty. No, I want to go with the guy who's
the hot
gonna,
hand.
Yeah, who's going to get that guy's
right
ass
on.
out.
And that's the same way I like to think as well. And I think Dusty, he's taken so much heat over the years and his past playoff failures for actually keeping guys in the game too long. So now I think he's over-coaching and he's doing things against how he usually coaches, and that's what he's doing, exactly like you're talking about. He's overanalyzing the game. He's trying to put these analytics into it instead of going with the hot hand, going with what his gut feels. And that's kind of surprising about Dusty. I hope he doesn't continue on that trend, and hopefully from these past 3 games that they've gotten swept, hopefully he learns from that, and he realizes exactly what you're bringing up, that he has to go with the hot hand, and it's not always about a lefty on a lefty or this or that or this or that. Which guy gives me the best chance to get that batter out? Simple as that. So we'll see, man.
I'm definitely gonna go check out the game as soon as I leave here. I'm gonna have me a cold one.
You should.
I'm gonna have me a cold one.
You should.
About that much foam at the top. I like a little bit. Don't give me it with none. I want just a little bit of head on that sucker.
Hey, man, you know what?
Cold
Have
Modelo.
fun. Drink one for me because we usually knock a few back together and make sure you have your shot. But get Uber. I know you got dropped off here today because I know you're getting ready to go do what you do and you're not going to drive home. So, hey, man, go have some fun. Enjoy your birthday. And
we got 2 thumbs up from Jerome Beatty on YouTube.
My bro, man.
I wanna thank everybody for if you're following on YouTube or you went to the YouTube channel and subscribe, man. We thank you. I saw you guys following along. Don't be afraid to jump in and comment. I can see every comment right here on the screen, and I'd love to respond to you guys. I'd love to interact with you guys. If you're watching, get in on the show. As I call it, tap into what we're doing here. We'd love to have you.
You know what? And
Jerome, thanks a lot for tuning in, brother.
Yeah, man, I'm trying to get my brother in here, man, but his work schedule doesn't allow. But I've been trying to get him in here for a few years now to come join the show, and I'm sure he will at some point and look forward to it. I mean, of course, he knows sports just like I do, and we grew up on that sports, man. My dad had us in sports as long as we can remember. Hey, you know what's funny? Thinking about how good it feels in here. The AC feels so good right now and everything. I know the past few weeks, at least a few weeks ago.
Oh, you can't get Greg sweating. He gets irritated.
Hey, man, you know what, man? Let me feel some air. And you know what's funny? And it doesn't have to be cold, but we don't want to be in here sweating. And but come to find out, they actually turned the air off in the building. It's not grade A that's doing it. But now they've been keeping it on lately. But I never forget when me and my brother used to mess with the air conditioner when we were kids. My mom used to say, "Who messed with this air?" You know, which one of y'all messed with this air? Y'all act like y'all was born with a damn air conditioner up y'all ass. And I remember I used to say to myself, "Nah, well, we was damn sure born with one blowing on our ass." But
yeah, right.
we was damn sure blowing one on our ass, that's for sure. So I don't like to be sweating if we don't have to be sweating. But hey, man, it's been fun as always, Eddie. You know that, bro. And again, happy birthday to you. Have some fun. Be careful. You know what? And we'll see you guys. Hey, thanks on YouTube. Thanks on Facebook. Let's go watch some basketball. What are the Nets doing right now?
Let me see. I got it right here. Right now, Brooklyn is up 100 to 74. Like we talked about, that one.
Why is anybody even watching that series right now? Hey, but you know what? We'll be back next Tuesday doing what we do, loving what we do. Legends live and let live.
Y'all stay safe. Good night.